swapping between different glasses for me, so Fox stole my varifocals, so I'm using long distance and short distance. It's not a very long story. I left them on the grass and the fox took them. Right, okay. Bloody foxes, yeah, foxes walking around wearing them going, these varifocals don't work very well. Okay, first I'm going to do some housekeeping before we go into the agenda. So just the general announcements. The fire alarm goes off. Obviously, it won't be a practice, so get back out the way you came in. Can people please make sure that your mobile phones are switched off or on silent? Councillors who are using the Modern Gov application to access the document pack for the meeting can continue to do that, but only for that. The meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast, unless we go into confidential session for exempt items, which we shouldn't be doing. So by entering the council chamber and using the public seating, members of the public are de facto consenting to being filmed. For committee members, I'm sure you don't need to be reminded. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. Wait for an invitation from me, and no debating across the chamber, debates through the chair. And remember to turn your microphone off when you're finished speaking, and speak clearly, loudly, etc. And when referring to a specific report page or slide, mention where exactly you're talking about so that we can all be on the same page. Right. And again, for members of the public, just to let you know, if you're not aware, the setup here, sorry, can't see with the short distance glasses on. Right, the members on the inner square are members of the councillors, are members of the committee, and I'm the chair. And up here with me, we have planning officers, legal officer, and democratic services who make sure that all the electronics work properly and do the voting stuff. So I've got different colours on the glasses, but it still doesn't help because I've got the wrong glasses and I can't see what the colour is. Okay, right. I also need to just quickly mention committee etiquette for committee members, please, and for people who are doing public speaking, etc. Everyone should be mindful of the need to remain open and actively listen to all representations being made, including by local residents and ward councillors. And try to avoid interruptions from the public gallery, even if you disagree with what's being said. Just be mindful, everybody, that the public and those watching, including on the camera at home, may interpret your reactions and body language, and so it's important that your focus remains on the meeting and that we all remain polite and considerate to one another. So let's move on to the meeting agenda. Apologies. I've got apologies from councillors Cambeatis, Luff and Ryder. Anybody got any other apologies? No. Okay. Declarations of interest. It's not actually a declaration of interest, but I'm aware that Councillor Callanan from Stonehouse won't be taking part in the debates and determination of the first agenda item, the application in Stonehouse. He's decided to speak in public speaking as ward councillor instead. So in a second, I'll be inviting him to just leave the inner circle and while we do that item. Right. Any other declarations of interest? Oh, I just said that's not strictly a declaration of interest, but anybody? No. Okay. Minutes of the last meeting, 17th of June 2025. Can you raise your hand if you agree with those as an accurate record? Okay, that's fine. I'll sign those after the meeting. So, first item, Councillor Callanan, could I ask you to, do you know whereabouts you're going to be sitting? Okay, if you could just move out of the inner circle, so there's, just as a technicality, so you're clearly not part of the committee for the determination of this application. Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, so this is item 4.1. application for 42 High Street Stonehouse, alterations to shop frontage and erection of single-storey rear extension to existing premises, use class E, sale of food and drink. Case officer is Sarah Carruthers, and she will be introducing her report now. Okay, Sarah?
Thank you. Thanks. Yes, you should have received the late pages, item 4.1, and they just refer to the recently submitted assessment, which Environmental Health have commented on and made some recommendations. So, sorry, it keeps dropping. Officers have recommended that conditions 5 and 6 are replaced by 3 different conditions that will secure the implementation of the extraction system and the submission of further details on noise mitigation scheme and the management plan and their implementation of that noise mitigation. So the proposal today is the shop frontage and erection of single-storey rear extension to the existing premises at 42 High Street in Stonehouse. So the site is located within the Stonehouse town centre. It's set over 3 floors, with the ground floor currently a cafe and a 2-bedroom residential unit above. This map now shows the town centre boundary outlined. You've got the site central. Sorry. And the above aerial image actually shows the site in 2023. Just to point out, there were a range of outbuildings and extensions that extended across the rear plot. The 2025 image just below, if you can pick it out, it's central. They've been removed. So we have the front elevation, which was seen on site. That rear elevation. And then some images just showing that context of Orchard Place. We've got some properties at the rear. The bottom right image just shows the end bank. The van is located. There's a driveway that runs along the back of those properties, and then there's another driveway there alongside that accesses the bungalows. So we have the existing floor plan with the cafe and storage and prep rooms at the rear and residential unit above. The existing elevations. And we have these are the proposed floor plans. If I concentrate on the ground floor plan here, the extension will approximately double the floor area. It will provide 45 seats. There's a new kitchen serving area at the rear, and there's a sort of narrow courtyard area that will be covered. That's along the side, and there's a detached bin store right at the rear. There's a rear access into the courtyard as well, just up top, you can see. So the elevations, we've got low-level extension, very simple design in matching red brick. Officers did negotiate some changes to the southeast elevation, just to provide some outlook and some interest. That elevation. And then we've got the bifold doors on the front elevation. They're just reflective of the existing large opening. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, thank you. To point out that the height of the extension, it's 3 metres in height. At the very rear, it just extends slightly to 3.2 where the ground levels drop away, but overall 3 metres in height. Just the block plan, and we've got, it just outlines where the building is in relation to that, the red. We've measured the distance of the rear extension to the principal elevation of the number 1 Orchard Place, and that's measured off at 12 metres. Relevant to the scheme is an extant permission. Planning permission was granted for a single-storey dwelling on the plot in 2022, which could be built out. The proposal is similar in scale and form of that approved dwelling. Again, the heights of the original, the dwelling was to replace outbuildings that I mentioned previously. Those buildings, the original buildings, and the dwelling, the maximum height was 3 metres as well. So it's all in line with what's been previously. Just some images of the outbuildings that were there previously, as I said, shown in 2023. The one on the right, it shows that side on, in relation to the bungalows and those nearby residential buildings. So in considering the principle of development, the built form has been accepted under that extant scheme, and that could be built out. The site is located within the town centre and a first-tier settlement, which is considered, where this type of development should be located, and it's supported under local plan core policies. The use is compatible with the mixed use area, which is residential and commercial. There's some industrial units, small industrial units nearby. It's a doctor's surgery and school, so mixed use area. It's acknowledged that it would be within proximity of the properties, but this is unusual for a town centre location. And just to show some examples of that, we've got some food establishments in the area, sort of on the high street, and just showing how close some properties are. It's not unusual. And then there's just a bit further along off the high street. So objections have been received, and they largely refer to concerns of noise and odour and general disturbance to the nearby occupiers. A degree of noise is expected when living in a town centre, and occupiers would be protected against odour and noise nuisance under statutory nuisance under environmental legislation. There is an extractor fan with silencers, some noise mitigation. They are proposed to be attached to the wall within the courtyard, and Environmental Health have raised no objections and are satisfied that the proposal can be conditioned to the extraction system and mitigation are installed and maintained in accordance with those details. There are some proposed Thank you. There are proposed hours of operation, Monday to Friday, 7 till 4, and Saturday, 9 till 4. Officers feel that it would be unreasonable to impose further restrictions on hours in a town centre location. taking into account the hours of the existing cafe are not restricted. Other similar uses are not restricted or have a very limited restriction. Food licences regulate late night opening after 11 p.m. And also food establishments can now operate under a use and use class E covers a range of commercial uses of retail, professional services, gyms, creches, and that includes food establishments, restaurants and cafes. And that's all without limits on operating hours. They've also proposed that bin store enclosed in the courtyard. With highways concerns, there have been objections, and they've referred to an impact on highway safety. There's no changes to the access arrangements to the site, and it's considered to be located, it's accessible location and sustainable in the town centre with a council car park nearby. There's been no objections from the local highways authority, and they've recommended a construction management plan for the works when they take place. There were some concerns about ecology because the survey submitted was out of date. It largely referred to the outbuildings on the site, which they have now been demolished. So officers felt that there's an updated survey. The proposal does include, though, enhancements and lighting design strategy on the extant scheme. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, just to conclude, local and national planning policies support the town centre development in principle, and the extension is of a similar scale and form to the extant scheme. The development is considered appropriate for the town centre, and occupiers would be protected against noise and odour nuisance by the recommended conditions and under environmental legislation. The proposal would bring about benefits to the local economy and the Stonehouse town centre, and officers are therefore recommending permission subject to the following conditions. Thank you.
Okay, my microphone isn't working either now. I don't think moving is necessarily going to help if it's an issue. It's going to. We're just going to take a 5-minute pause while we have a chat and see whether there's some way we can sort this out. I'm not sure there is going to be. Soldier on and see how it goes. Maybe it'll resolve itself. Okay, right. So now we move into public speaking, and ward councillor, as I mentioned before, John Callanan is going to be speaking as a ward councillor. John, you don't have a time limit, but as I always say, we appreciate brevity, especially when we've got a long agenda.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm a Stonehouse Town Councillor as well as being a district councillor. And Stonehouse Town Council, along with all other towns and parishes, get the opportunity to have a look at the plans. Same problem here, I'm afraid. The applications, they're to comment, but those comments are passed back. And there's a standard wording that Stonehouse Town Council use, which is no comment, subject to neighbours not objecting. I think that's pretty much their standard comment. In this case, when it went through Stonehouse Town Council, there was no objection. Later, became apparent that the neighbours affected did object, and that's the reason I'm here, to speak on their behalf and for them. I looked at the plans, and as far as I could see, there's a substantial reason to believe there's overdevelopment of the site, doubling the site of the footfall or the square meterage. With regard to the noise and the smell issues, I think there was an attempt by officers to mitigate by obtaining some serious design reports submitted on those particular issues. The difficulty is that I've lived in Stonehouse all my life, so I've seen all the various businesses come and go. I've seen the place change quite dramatically in some areas and less so in others. This is an area that's been quietly allowed to continue and off the high street, quietly out of the way. The residents will be affected by noise. They will be affected by smell. On the site visit, we noticed that the door of the kitchen was wide open. Well, we were actually there. We also witnessed the rather intriguing way in which the refuse service collected their rubbish. Until there is no chance in hell that a refuse lorry could get down to the side of that property. The point is made, or has been made by the officer, that it's within the centre of Stonehouse and therefore there's no restrictions, and there's certainly no parking restrictions, and there's nothing coming with this plan regarding planning, and that the anticipation is that the town centre car park will be used for all the people who are going to be flooding into this particular property and enjoy the food. The truth of the matter is, in Stonehouse, we have a continual problem of long-term parking, using those same spaces on street, off street, in the car parks for daily trips, weekly trips to London. They park up, it's a nice free car park, and off they jolly well go. So the traders on the high street, the people of Stonehouse, have historically had difficulty in parking. So I don't agree with the officer's report insofar as the ample street parking, ample parking in the centre of Stonehouse. Just not. The difficulty is, having read the report, I think the extant planning approval is the issue, and I can see that there's going to be very, very little enthusiasm for overturning the officers. But, and here is a big but, if there are conditions applied to this application, if it's approved, I think it's vitally important that those conditions be monitored and applied. I'm rather disappointed that there's examples that I'm aware of where this hasn't happened. The application is approved. The developer gets on and builds it and pays no attention to the conditions. Years can go by before something, if ever. So my promise to the residents of Stonehouse affected by this application, if it goes through, and I suspect it will go through, I live very close by to this development, and I will be spending an awful lot of time making sure that all of the conditions that have been applied are actioned. And I'm extremely disappointed with the late papers that clearly indicate that the time, that the opening times in the late papers was going to come through as a recommendation. I see that it's been dropped, that it's come off the list. Very, very disappointed that that's the case. I think that's the end of my contribution, but thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, John. Could you switch? Oh, it's gone off on its own. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt the proceedings. Good evening, members. Unfortunately, as you can see, we're having a few technical problems with our equipment this evening. Democratic Services, unfortunately, tell me that there's not an awful lot we can do, so we're going to have to bear with it. For our public speakers tonight, what we're probably going to do is switch your microphone on for you from the top desk, and Charlie will monitor that for you, and we'll try and keep you switched on for as long as we can. We'll obviously bear that in mind, Chair, I would suggest, whilst we're looking at the timings. I think it's probably going to be a frustrating evening. I do apologise to those in the room and watching us on the webcam. We'll do as best as we can. Turning it off and back on again is probably unlikely to fix it, so we're just going to have to persevere. So, thank you.
Can I suggest that perhaps members use your neighbour as a button buddy, as it were, so that when you're speaking, if the neighbour could have their finger sort of poised over the button and be responsible for pressing the button again to get the microphone back on, that way the person who's speaking can then concentrate on what they're saying instead of constantly having to stop themselves and press the button. So if you could sort of somehow find a way of buddying up with your neighbours, and also the public speakers perhaps could have somebody sat next to them also with a finger on the button, that might reduce the pauses as much as possible. From up here, yeah, could do. Yeah, Griff just suggested we actually have the public speakers come up to the top table too.
No.
Sorry.
Well,
Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, you mean switched on and off by Democratic Services? Yes, I misunderstood that. Mine seems to be behaving itself, but then I'm the chair, so I've probably got a special one. I do know I could turn everybody else's on and off, but I haven't been doing it, I promise. Right, okay, well, we'll continue. I don't think holding the button down is actually help. Does that help at all if you actually hold the button down while you're talking? It seems to be working for me, but okay. Maybe let's just see how we get on. Okay, so we're continuing with public speaking. Wrong glasses. We don't have anybody from Stonehouse Parish Council that I'm aware of, but we do have Richard Lacey speaking in opposition. Yep. Okay, if you can come to the microphone, and as we said, Democratic Services will switch the microphone on, so don't worry about it going off. They'll switch it back on for you from up here if it does go off. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Sorry, I should, in all the kerfuffle about misbehaving microphones, I forgot to tell you that you do have a 4-minute time limit, and I will have to interrupt you if you start to go over. Okay, thanks.
Right, okay. Thank you. Good evening. My name's Richard Lacey. My wife and I live at 2 Orchard Place off High Street, Stonehouse, which is a cluster of 4 bungalows with the closest point from the application site only 3 metres from the boundary of our neighbours at number 1 Orchard. The case officer talks of the high street and that noise is part of living on a high street, but our post office description is stated as off high street. We are 40 plus yards away and noise protected by 3-storey high street buildings, which make our homes quiet and secluded and not noisy as the case officer assumes acceptable. It's also behind the application site, but there is also Orchard Court, the over 60s retirement complex immediately behind our properties, who will be near enough to experience noise and smells too. If the application is approved during the construction process, there will be large disruption to that quiet. Following eventual completion, you should bear in mind the kitchens with the attendant noise of food preparation and staff voices raised will be only 10 metres away from the bedroom and lounge of number 1 Orchard Place. The bin store will be not much further away from our bedrooms. The case will not be overbearing, but we, the residents, strongly dispute this. Opening hours will be from 7 a.m. and it's not unreasonable to suppose that staff will arrive not long after 6:15 a.m. to prepare for the day. The case officer concedes that operating hours expansion could not be challenged despite comments, and so we might also have longer evening hours with takeaway to contend with. You're looking at an establishment that will be doubled in size with 45 seats and a takeaway service on top, with a considerable investment requiring to be repaid in terms of turnover. The report refers to policy CP12 and that towns need commercial premises to provide services to contribute to a strong local economy. Stonehouse Town Centre currently has Italian, Indian, pizza restaurants, also offering takeaway services, together with 3 chip shops, Chinese and kebab takeaways, 2 pubs, one of which is a large restaurant extension, and 2 cafes before you even consider Tasty's current operation. Surely that's enough of a strong contribution to the local economy in terms of dining opportunities. We believe, therefore, that the degree of harm to the residents is not significant and would be outweighed by the benefits of the scheme to the local economy is flawed. With regard to the very real concerns on smells and noise, the current cafe emits a great deal of frying odours, which, because of the courtyard design of the kitchens and extractor fan at the rear, will be directed to the bungalows and flats behind the application site. Currently open, and the heat generated during cooking may well expect this to continue even with a repositioned side door. Today, even bad, number 1 has a health condition and she needs windows open for ventilation. The inclusion of the extractor fan to the courtyard side of the kitchen will mean that any noise or smells displaced by this will be discharged towards the bungalows, as this is the only way to go, as it is restricted by walls on the other 3 sides. Add to this the positioning of the frequently used bin store, and this makes for a very noisy and unpleasant atmosphere. Orchard Place, which borders the site, is narrow and provides access to the rear of High Street. Vision is very limited vehicles travelling on this lane, and building to the limits of the site will no doubt provide visual impairment and difficulties for those currently using this access. Any obstruction causes problems, and this application will create further issues with deliveries, bin collections, emergency vehicles, etc. As far as I can see, there are no concrete details on how deliveries will be made to the property. There's not enough...
Sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off now because you've gone over the 4 minutes, I'm afraid, unless you're very, very close to the end.
I am very close to the end.
Okay, well,
yeah.
if you could sum up in about 10 seconds.
Okay. I was hesitating because of the voice kept going off, which is difficult.
Yeah, I understand. That's why I'm prepared to give you a few more seconds.
In that case, I would say that it's most regrettable and not helpful that the last-minute reports posted on the 9th and 11th of July after the DCC report was issued do not give analysis of such statements made therein. And so we would therefore urge you to reject the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Apologies for the problems with the microphone. I know it can be distracting. Right, finally, in public speaking, I think we have Mr. Gore, who's the applicant. And I think after we finish public speaking, when we start doing questions, it might be an idea if people try holding the, committee members try holding the button down to see whether that helps. But for now, we'll do the same for you, Mr. Gore. We'll switch your microphone back on from up here if it goes off. And you again will have 4 minutes. The timer will be up on the screen, so if you could keep an eye on that, then I'll allow a little bit of leeway given that the microphones are acting up, but you can try and keep it to 4 minutes. Okay, thanks.
Hi, Lang. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Gore. No, I'm the property owner now of the 42 High Street. I know John as well. No, we met a few times now from Stonehouse Football Club. Mentioned now the new build was way bigger than the existing build. I disagree. No, which is the planning office. No, can show you on a photo.
Sorry, would you like to stop for a second while we sort out the telephone? Okay. Okay. Would you like to start again, given the
No, I'm
interruption?
all right. No,
Okay.
the existing building is way bigger than a new build. So I disagree. No, what you say. And regarding the parkings of the Stonehouse Town, the people using train stations, yeah, but they park a car on the high street. You know, that doesn't help with the local business. You know, that's town council have to deal with that. There's no resident or local business. No. Also, I disagree with that as well. I would like to build something, know what Stonehouse needs. And I know it's going to cost me a lot of money. And then I have a few business which has been in Stroud quite a long time. You know, just open and close, which is I can show you know my existing business, which is quite a lot of people all know as well. And the reason why I want to build the house, I think Stonehouse High Street, what Stonehouse High Street mixing is, if you go there, where else can you go? You either go charity shop. Where else you got in Stonehouse? You know, you need something like Italians. When the Italians, you see how many people travel to go to Italians, and then you see what's the reason why they so popular? Tetbury. I think town council should think about what's the problem. Instead, blend on a local business. You should be helping local business, not object or put any, not even help with local business. And then, I think, what I try to do now with Tasty, that will attract and that will bring more people to the Stonehouse High Street, and which you can see, when the Tasties reopen, how many people go there having the breakfast, having the tea, having the coffee, and people stay there, have a chit. I don't know why I have to come here. It's a free party coming tonight. One of it, which is me. Second one, which is Cam, talk about 300-watt house. Third one, which is a 34 house in King Stanley. We got a small extension at the back of the shop, and we need to bring that up here. I think we can use this time for something else better than try to helping the local small business. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now moving on to questions from members to the officer. And this is just from members of the public. This is questions just from members of the committee, not from the public. And as I said, perhaps try holding your button down when you're speaking, see if that helps. Right, who's first? Dave and Terry, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, public speakers. Some clearly impassioned views. I've just got a couple of questions. First is a question about customer access. Is there any customer access into the premises from the Orchard Place side alley?
The main access to the cafe is the front and the customer access. There is a rear access, but I would imagine that goes into the private courtyard at the rear, the bin store. That wouldn't be a sort of customer access. There's no sort of rear area out the back or where customers would gather. So I don't believe it's the design and layout is set up that way. So there's no reason why the public would need to go down Orchard Place and down to the rear of the site.
Great, thank you. The courtyard at the back, is that likely, or is it designated, as far as we're aware, as the smoking area? And has that been considered in the deliberations?
The only access to the rear to the courtyard is via the kitchen at the back. So, it doesn't seem to be open to the public.
Understood. Thank you.
Customers.
No, and then the final question is, I noticed on the application, it goes only looking to open for fairly restricted hours, and it seems like we've kind of disregarded that, and we're not going to condition that in the recommendation. And I wonder whether, had consultees known that it could potentially open for extended hours, whether that would have raised more objections, and whether we therefore should condition the opening hours to the hours that the applicant asked for.
Yeah, I mean, the applicant has proposed that those would be the opening hours. I think Environmental Health, they have expressed that they would like them to be conditioned, and we have considered that, but feel that it would be unreasonable because of other uses could also operate under Class C unrestricted. If members would want to condition the hours, we'd have to think about the length of time and what would be reasonable.
Yeah, just to remind members that you need to apply the tests of a planning condition to any condition that you are proposing. We've done through this in many sessions of our member training. This isn't annoying at all. We apply those tests when we're making a recommendation. This site is currently unfettered. This site is currently unfettered, so there are no restrictions on its use. So the question is, what is the level of intensification? Why is that intensification going to bring about a harm? And how would that harm then be mitigated by these conditions when applying these tests? Does it pass the test of necessary? Does it pass the test of reasonable?
Yes, Terry.
I'd just like, please, Sarah, I seem to recollect that the courtyard was going to be covered, though I'd just like a bit more. And I would have thought that would mitigate some of the concerns about noise and the exhaust fan somewhat. And in what way is the conditions that we're asking for regarding the specification of the exhaust fan? To what extent are odours controlled by those specifications? And presumably there has been consideration of odours as well as decibels and where the fan is positioned. Can you elaborate any more on that, please?
Yes. The floor plans show that the entire, show that the covering at that single story level, it extends across the rear of the site to the rear wall along that side elevation. So that's the extent of the covering. And where it's red on the wall of that inside in the courtyard, that's where the extractor fan is proposed. So the extractor fan, they have given on the system, and Environmental Health have agreed with that, so they feel that is acceptable. They've also submitted details on silencers, a form of noise mitigation, and that is acceptable. They just wanted a bit more detail on how they are being installed to make sure that it is fully in accordance with that noise, the noise impact assessment that they submitted, and the conditions that we've recommended just or the implementation of all of that, and also the ongoing maintenance and management of that. So it's just for the long term as well.
Chair, if I may, I'll just refer Councillor Kinnis. Just refer you to the conditions listed in the update sheet. So the first one of those conditions was about the noise impact assessment report and the silencers. The second one was then also about the noise, but the third one was about carbon filtration, which is for your smells and odours.
Okay, any more questions? Yes, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any openings at the rear of the property? I can't remember whether there are any windows or anything else that might, if they were opened, obviously impact noise levels. You know, thinking if it was warm, or are there no openings at the back? Is it just the ventilation?
No, the bottom left-hand corner is is that rear elevation. You've got the bin store that faces away and enclosed into the courtyard, and then that back wall is rear elevation of the extension. So there are some openings on that southeast elevation side into Orchard Place, and then you've got the top right. That's the door that opens into the courtyard, the enclosed courtyard, and that goes into the kitchen.
Just, I think from memory, if you can clarify, on that elevation, there were no windows. So there's a new block of flats. I don't think there are any windows, certainly not further down. I think on the other side, there were no windows even into that.
No, that's correct.
And I've got a sort of follow-up. Construction management plan, there's no mention of a condition on working times for the builders, as far as I can see. I might be wrong, but I would have thought that would be a normal condition we would want to put on in terms of, you know, noise nuisance for the actual construction phase of the building.
Okay, just give Sarah. Oh, have you found it?
Yeah, just checking that. No, we can add that condition. I don't see. Yes, I think you've a motion to recommend that condition.
Yes, Millie.
Just a question about the bins, which we did see collected. Turn me off. Two things. Are the premises that go on beyond this one that we're discussing, are any of those businesses with industrial-sized bin collections? And also looking at the elevation where that little white car is parked, is that the side door through which those large industrial bins have to come to be emptied? Because there's no exit at the back, is there, now? Have I got that right?
Just behind that car in the illustration,
Yeah.
that is the gate into the courtyard.
Yeah.
Yes. The access way, if I can. You can see the bin store.
I can.
And
I'm
this-
just struggling to see how the bins get out if there's no access point on that back wall.
There is a gate, so
In the back wall? How does it get there? Goes to a pinch point.
that area is open.
Can you show the elevation?
That is the plan. This is the plan. This area is open and that is the gate. So the bins are in that bin store
I've
behind
got
there.
it. So the construction doesn't follow that line that the cars drive down. It's literally where the building ends. There isn't an extra wall.
There's no extra wall where that red line is along here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there is this access way that runs along the back to the back of those properties. Of commercial properties, so they will have their refuse collections and their private refuse collections, and then also there is the grey line is also access to those bungalows as well. They obviously all have their own refuse collections, and we saw bins out and so on when we were on site.
Thank you, Sarah.
Any more questions? If not, then we need a proposal. I'm not going to put words into your mouth, Martin, but would you like to consider proposing officer advice with the condition that you were suggesting on the construction management plan?
I will, Chair. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Piercy. So your proposal is officer advice subject to an amendment to condition 7, which starts on page 26 of your papers. We then have, as part of condition 7, a set of bullet points. And just to confirm, your proposal is that those bullet points will include construction times, or that you're proposing there's a separate condition, which is a standard construction times condition. You've got two ways in which you may achieve what I think you are proposing.
In terms of the standard, what is, remind me what that is.
So you could apply a standard construction hours condition, which says, if there's something along the lines of work shall be carried out between 8 and 6 Monday to Friday, and deliveries and plant, which is a fairly standard condition. So despite the fact I can't remember the words right now, they will be written down for me somewhere.
Would you be okay with proposing that, Martin?
I would, yes.
Okay, I need a seconder for that. Dave? Yeah. Okay. Right. Dave is a seconder. You have the right to kick off.
Thank you. Well, clearly impassioned views from a number of parties, and it's been good to hear those. Stonehouse I live fairly near to Stonehouse. It's a bustling town centre, and I think a good part of that is because of the vibrant hospitality sector. This is an existing hospitality outlet, an existing cafe. I think that extending it will clearly increase, or the applicant certainly hopes that it will increase footfall. But I think that good steps have been taken to minimise the impact on neighbouring residential properties, and in particular the lack of any side or rear customer access, the noise and odour mitigation, and the fact there are no openings on that back wall, and the extant planning permission for the residential application that was made. I think all of those work in favour of the applicant's application, and therefore I will be wholeheartedly supporting the application.
Anybody else for debate? Yes, Terry.
I thought we were talking about the motion, discussing the motion, which is to add the, has that all been accepted? Sorry, but.
Sorry, so, yeah, the motion's been proposed and seconded, so we're actually in debate now. Yeah. Okay.
We're debating the motion or we're debating the decision on the application?
The motion.
Yeah.
To permit with the amendment to the addition of timings for the construction method.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There's no other debate. Martin, did you want to?
So just to clarify, this is for the whole thing, not just the addition to the motion? Yes. Okay. I think Councillor Matthews said it probably better than I will, that clearly there are strong views on both sides. Whenever you've got developments, you've got sort of commercial development and residentials next door to each other, there's going to be some tension between those two activities. There is an existing restaurant there. There was an existing building there beforehand, and this just really sort of replicates what was already accepted from a residential perspective. Put that into a commercial perspective. We do need to encourage, commercial enterprises in the district. We need jobs within the district. There are too few jobs in the district at the moment, Stone is a bit of a hub in terms of food, bringing people not just from Stonehouse but from other areas as well. I think we do acknowledge the parking problem with the car parks and people using that for a long stay, which they shouldn't do. But that's not part of the planning process. That is for the town council, perhaps with Stroud to support a change to that, maybe put in planning and whatever. But that's not part of what we're dealing with here. So I think on balance, therefore, I wish to propose this development goes ahead.
Okay. Dave, did you want to come in quickly?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make one further comment. I think Councillor Callan made a really important point around conditions and ensuring that developers and operators adhere to those conditions. And we've seen it here many times where conditions are not met, and then we're forced as a council to assess whether it's worth going after enforcing those conditions. So I think, I would urge everybody involved in this application to make sure you have a policeman on your doorstep, and I would urge everybody to make sure that you do adhere to the conditions that have been applied to this proposed consent, and watch out if you slip on any of them, because we know that at least one person will be after you.
Okay, time's getting on, so I think we can go straight to a vote now. And fingers crossed it's working. If it doesn't, we'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way with hands. So what you're voting on is to permit, with the addition of the timings, the standard condition that Griff's outlined on the construction management plan. So it's 1 to permit with that addition, 2 for no. Okay, so 1 for yes, 2 for no. I haven't got flashing lights, but I'll try. Oh,
Just 2 seconds then. Any flashing lights?
no. Did I have flashing lights? I was busy explaining what we're voting on. Okay, so those who haven't, can we do that by hand, or do we want to try and get it?
Just do an old-fashioned roads of hands, but
Yeah,
can everyone just...
legal advice is that we just ignore that and do a hand vote. Okay, so ignore what's on the screen. All those in favour, hands up. Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, so that is permitted with the addition of the construction timings. Okay, that took a bit longer than I thought it would. It's taken an hour. And next we have Ham, which
Anybody want a quick...
I was just going to
say.
ask, should we have just a very quick comfort break in case the CAM one goes on? Does anybody feel that they would benefit from having a quick comfort break now? Yeah, looks like they would. Right, okay, welcome back. And the next application is land west of the A4135 Draycote Cam. Hybrid application for residential development of up to 795 dwellings, 226 dwellings of which are full application, the remaining 569 are in outline, with all matters reserved, with supporting infrastructure and enabling works including new vehicular, that's American, isn't it, vehicular access of the A4135, public open space, landscaping and drainage infrastructure. Case officer is John Chaplin, and he's going to introduce his report now. Okay, John?
Hello members, so yes, this is the hybrid application as Chair said. I'll just go over that so we're clear. It's outline for the total number, which is 795 plus a safeguarded school site. All matters are reserved on the outline bit. What we do have is the phase 1 in full, so we've got all the details of that. That is for 226 dwellings. So, as you can see on the screen here, this application, the outline bit is the sort of the brown bit, with phase 1 being the hashed bit. The blue bit to the top is part of the draft allocation, but is not. It's a separate application by Robert Hitchens, so it's not for consideration tonight. But both this application and the blue bit are part of the draft allocation, which is in the draft local plan. Okay, so what we have before us, the applicant has decoupled their site from the wider site and has submitted this application, and they have now actually submitted an appeal for non-determination. So the decision on the planning application is actually now with the planning inspectorate. So what we're seeking from members tonight is input on the principle of development and whether or not you want officers to defend the proposal at the appeal. So here's the indicative master plan. The development contains, in effect, 3 character areas. What the proposal looks to do is have the denser development through the middle. So there's areas through the middle which are more dense. We've got the tree-lined streets in the middle with the spine road going through this site and out through the adjacent site. And then on the edge, as you go out from the middle, the density decreases, and then you've got the sort of greener edges on the side of the development. The outline or the indicative plan here, you can see, shows the open spaces that help to break up the development areas, the parcels of development. So we've got the hedgerows retained and those sort of green connections in and out through the site. As I said, the outline site includes a school safeguarded site. Yeah, the school site is at the bottom there. So that's reserved for a primary school. In that area as well, there's also a site for a public car park, which the idea of that is to provide improved access and parking for the Jubilee playing fields, which is the existing playing fields, which is just to the sort of southwest of the site. The outline proposal also includes some allotment provision, and they've been indicatively shown at the top there, you can sort of see the brown markings at the top. Okay, so this plan here shows the full element. So this is phase 1. This shows, this has a mix of house types, with the majority being 2 and 3 bed properties. There's 30% affordable housing shown, so that's 69 dwellings affordable, and you can see the density there as well. It's showing what they're looking to provide the maximum number that they think is acceptable on this site. Okay, so I'll just highlight a couple of issues as well. Highways. So where we are with highways is we've reached a position with National Highways, South Gloucestershire as the highway authority at junction 14 and County Council Gloucestershire that we've got an interim position on junction 14 of the M5. So the highway authorities are satisfied that the interim mitigation proposed is sufficient to mitigate the extra traffic movements from this development. So they're happy that we can secure this via a condition. The local highway network also needs some further mitigation as well. So this is along the A38 corridor and also in sort of more local to the site in the sort of Cam Dursley area as well. So we're satisfied that these can come forward and be secured either by obligation or through some conditions. So we're happy, and the highway authorities are generally satisfied that that mitigation can be put in place. What we have received today is a late objection from Gloucestershire County Council Highways. They've raised technical highway matters. They've raised concerns about the design of the roundabout. These are technical highway matters, but to note, the roundabout is not part of this application tonight. They've also raised concern about the signalised junction. These are technical as well. And they've also raised concern about some of the bus lay-by designs. They've also highlighted a concern or asked for extra technical detail again on the internal layout. So with these, there's clearly a little bit more work for the applicant to do and engage with County Highways on some of those sort of technical matters. But I think as officers, we're more satisfied that the either the detailed technical matters are in the public highways where County Council has overall control, or they're matters that we can discuss and come to more of a solution, a technical design solution within the timeline of the appeal. Okay, and then just a couple of other things to mention. Contributions. Various bodies have asked for contributions towards infrastructure. I'd just like to update what I put in the report. The County Council's latest comment was from December 2024, and I've got some updated numbers as well, because the numbers I listed in the report were slightly incorrect, so those numbers will change slightly. But what I would just say about the planning obligations is that now is a matter for the planning inspector, for the inspector to make the decision on. We'll obviously have further discussions with the applicant on that, but it's not really a matter that we're seeking detailed input tonight. What we're asking the committee to tell us is how you want us to proceed at the appeal. So it's more that principal question about whether you want us to support this development outside the settlement limits of the adopted plan, and then in effect delegate to officers to carry on the negotiations with the developer regarding conditions and the obligations and those more technical details, particularly about highways that appear to still need to be addressed. So yes, I'm happy to take questions after public speaking, Chair.
Okay, thanks, John. Right, public speaking, ward members, we've got Councillor Ian Hamilton. I don't think we've got another ward councillor. If there is one hiding somewhere, stick your hand up quickly to correct me. No. Okay, so it's Ian. Again, you don't have a time limit, Ian, but it's a long agenda. It's going to be a long night, so brevity will be appreciated. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. And my thanks to members and to officers for this opportunity to speak to you about the development. As you can tell from my accent, I'm a native-born son of Cam, but in all seriousness, living that Cam offers, and so I want to really speak to that tonight. For some context, Cam Parish Council produced an excellent neighbourhood development plan. This was done through collaboration and consultation with the local. It's been recognised by the Royal Town Planning Institute and has gained recognition for its excellence in respect of the collaboration and consultation that was involved, and for the approach that has resulted in the creation of an exceptional quality plan for community living. I'm going to highlight a few of the concerns that I have a lot of council about the proposed development. The plan before the committee this evening, I think, fails to meet some of the aspirations expressed in CAM's excellent neighbourhood development plan. Firstly, the density is notable in comparable schemes in CAM, and the lack of green space to acknowledge the rural character of CAM. Also, the inclusion of three-storey homes is out of character with CAM and at odds with CAM's neighbourhood plan, and represents some over-urbanisation, in my view. There's insufficient walking and cycling connections through the site and also out into the surrounding area, so it risks not being integrated with the rest of CAM and creating an enclave, a community separate from the rest of CAM. Particularly as the plan faces onto the A4135, which, as we've noted, is a busy throughway from the A38 and to Dursley in the east, the phasing of this scheme and the other parts related to it risks omitting vital connecting elements, the spine road, for example, and the provision points on the A4135 that would also help to link this new development to the wider community of CAM. More access to open space, in particular to the Jubilee playing fields, and it goes along with the need for safer pedestrian access. The plan omits the proposed car park for Jubilee Fields, which would be a vital amenity for the school when developed for drop-off and collection in a safer location than attempting to do that along the A41. and if connected to that car park would allow access for pedestrians and alternative ways of travelling to and from the school. Cam Parish Council will make representation shortly. They're not fundamental scheme, but are eager to work with the developers to ensure the creation of a quality community living place with the excellent neighbourhood development plan. So in conclusion, members, I'd ask the members of the DCC to take consideration of these impacts and apply provisions in your decision to protect the unique and beautiful character of Cam and not dismantle it to make a dormitory village with the erosion of local quality living amenities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. If you could switch your mic off. Thanks. Now we've got the Cam Parish Council, Councillor Dennis Andrew Arthur. I think we're going to do the same thing. If your microphone goes off, we'll switch it back on from up here. Is that okay? Okay. I don't want two sets of people switching things on and off, on and off. It's get confusing. Right, Dennis, you will.
John Chaplin for
Sorry,
providing.
can I just say you will have 4 minutes and the counter's up there.
Can you
Okay.
start me again then?
I'll give you a few more seconds at the end.
Many thanks to John Chaplin for providing us with a thorough site assessment. Cam Parish Council acknowledges that both national and local planning policy actively encourage sustainable growth, particularly in locations with strong transport links. With this site being in very close proximity to Cam and Dursley railway station, we recognise this failure to appeal. As such, the Parish Council take a pragmatic and forward-looking position to ensure the development for purpose meets the infrastructure needs of an expanding parish and is in keeping and of high quality. Therefore, we would like to raise the following observations. We recommend that density be reduced to create a more balanced layout with public open space better integrated into the fabric of the development rather than pushed to its boundaries. There should be a balance of houses and green throughout to align with the Cam neighbourhood development plan. We continue to object to the inclusion of 3-storey homes. These are not in keeping with the surroundings nor the Cam neighbourhood plan and should be removed from the scheme. Greater consideration should be paid to neighbourhood development plan and design codes to ensure key characteristics around pedestrian and cycle movement options are maximised. The existing interconnecting public rights-of-way should be acknowledged in the site design. We would like to highlight again the pinch point across the A4135 at the railway bridge. Improved pedestrian access and safety is a necessity here throughout the wider areas. Restrictions regarding the newt population that were previously agreed at the planning application stage must be honoured, not mentioned in the documents. Cam Parish Council acknowledged that the DCC report has comprehensively addressed highways-related matters. However, we note that GCC Highways have raised significant objections. We strongly urge that further engagement with Robert Hitchens is pursued to ensure delivery of an essential major access infrastructure early in the build programme, which should be a condition of planning permission being granted. We welcome the recognition of the need for crossing 135 and request that these improvements are delivered early on in the build to ensure public safety. We welcome the inclusion of allotments in the scheme and will consider managing them on behalf of the community. We request that a more appropriate location be identified and an alteration made to the outline application prior to permission being granted. A practical location at the car park where there is currently a small play area. This would create a meaningful community infrastructure area within the development with educational benefits and an opportunity to connect with the school. We had hoped this development would provide an alternative vehicle route to the Jubilee playing fields. At the very least, the safety of the proposed pedestrian link must be reconsidered. Furthermore, the proposed car park for the Jubilee fields does not appear in phase 1, and we request that this element be brought forward earlier in the phasing plan to support community use. This should inevitably become a multi-use car park servicing the school, hopefully a allotment and the Jubilee playing fields. To summarise, Cam Parish Council does not object to the principle of development on this site, but would like to work more closely with the developer to ensure a quality build. We therefore recommend that planning permission not be granted until the following issues are addressed: reduction in housing density and integration of meaningful green space throughout the entire site, removal of three-storey dwellings to reflect local character, improved internal and external connectivity, particularly for pedestrians and cyclists, design code to ensure public safety and access to existing facilities in the wider parish, revision of the phasing strategy to critical infrastructure, including the Spine Road.
Sorry, Dennis, if the list is going to go on much longer, I am going to have to cut you off. So.
Repositioning of community infrastructure, specifically the allotments, to ensure a positive user experience, a clearer, safer access strategy for the Jubilee playing fields, including bringing forward the delivery of the associated car park. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Right, and speaking in opposition, we have Joe Kendall. Right. Are we going to manage, I think we'll manage your button for you up here. If it goes off, we'll switch it back on so you don't have to worry about, well, we have some interruptions. Okay, and your 4 minutes will be up on the screen. If you can keep an eye on it, I will have to cut you off if you go over. Okay, but I will give you a bit of leeway, given that I had to give Dennis a bit of leeway. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to represent CAM Community Action Group in regard to this application. I would firstly like to say that we wholeheartedly support the views and comments of CAM Parish Council and support their recommendations that plan granted until the issues they list are addressed. Contrary to what a lot of you may think, like the Parish Council, we accepted a long time ago that building in this particular location made some sort of sense if done properly and sensitively. However, the latest site plan that the developer has submitted is well below the standard of development we should have to accept, that any village should have to accept. The layout and content is not what was discussed 4 or 5 years ago between the developer and the Parish Council. It appears lots of empty promises were made simply to get them on side. This application pays lip service. Gone are the green fingers and tree-lined boulevards. Instead, we are to have tiny, cramped, poorly designed, cheaply built little boxes on a site so poorly laid out it doesn't work for people who will actually have to live there. In fact, it paints a sad dystopian picture for the future. Let's be completely clear and honest. Address the elephant in the room. SDC is in a catch-22 situation and understandably running scared that if you do the right thing for CAM and refuse it, a government inspector will simply override it and SDC will have to pick up costs which it, or rather we, can ill afford. And so CAM will end up yet again with a substandard development. So here we are in CAM with Box Road Fiasco Mark II. Actually, it's probably worse. Have we learnt nothing from the past? This application was submitted in July 2021, 4 years ago. Why, therefore, is it so bad? Why have none of the comments from residents or the Parish Council been acted upon? The officer's report lists phrases from and services, but let's consider the reality and look at this more closely. What facilities and what services? Oh, you mean in walking distance then. Cam has one dismal small supermarket actually in the village, but of course we will be getting a bigger one-stop shop at the garage with a coffee shop drive-through when that's redeveloped. Fabulous. That's okay, then the weekly shop is sorted. Access to employment opportunities. Where are those exactly? We lost 65 jobs at Sandila 2 years ago. Since then, I found 4 jobs advertised in Cam within housing and a couple in Dursley, and they are all either minimum wage or part-time. Is a local on minimum wage going to be able to afford these new houses? Probably not. Access to buses. Yes. On the main road only, as Stagecoach have already said, they won't go into the new estate, which merely gave the developer an opportunity to reduce the width of the roads and cram in even more houses, leaving no chance of a future bus route. I'm sure you have all done your homework and found out about the location and will know, like us locals, that what has been created in Box Road and soon to be extended here is dormitory living, urban sprawl and destruction of an existing community. Life for people in Cam is becoming one big traffic jam on the A4135, and this development is about to compound it. We have Vistry about to start the build of 266 houses on the opposite side of the road to this access, less than 100 metres from the site. We are therefore going to have many years of construction traffic rumbling up and down the same stretch of road with no improvement to the Box Road junction, which is already a dangerous stretch of road, especially if you are heading to the A38 and actually crossing the A4135. The early construction of the spine road through this site, therefore, is an absolute priority. Long-standing residents of Cam in particular feel ignored. We feel dumped on, we feel our village is not well regarded, not worth anything. We are overwhelmed. I am constantly told houses have to go somewhere, mainly by people that don't live in Cam. They live somewhere else in the district, and that somewhere else deserves more protection and consideration than Cam. Does this have to be an approval or refusal? Surely more constructive negotiations can take place with Persimmon, who must realise they are pushing on an open door if only some compromises can be found. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Okay. Right, now we're going to move on to questions from members. And again, this is questions from committee members, not from the public. And just to raise the point that you may find, you probably will find that it's maybe difficult for officers to answer some of your questions because this has quite precipitately been taken to appeal by the developers. So it hasn't followed the normal process of discussions and negotiations with the developer. So officers are actually quite limited in the kind of questions that they can answer. And obviously, just to make it clear, especially to the public, that, as John mentioned, we're not actually in a position to permit or refuse this tonight. What we are doing is we are effectively saying, in principle, purely on the principle of this site as a housing development site, whether, if it had come to committee rather than going to appeal, would we have been minded to permit or refuse as a way to guide officers on whether or not to challenge the principle of it at appeal. I mean, it is going to be decided by the inspectors now, not by us, so we're not saying yes or no to it. We're saying, do we want the principle of development on this site to be fought by officers? And just bear that in mind as we progress. Okay. Right. So questions, Dave, and then Helen.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got one question in the context of your opening remarks, which is, I'm a bit confused about density. There have been comments from the parish council and this evening about the high level of density, but by my reckoning, 795 dwellings across just short of 30 hectares gives a density of less than 27 dwellings per hectare. which is only just outside of the range of low density. So I accept that there will be pockets of higher and pockets of lower, but overall, I'm struggling slightly, John, why this development is being characterised as high density.
Yeah, as you said, there are different areas within the development. So what they've designed it is so that the core areas at points along the Spine Road have the higher density. So they're saying that's up to 50 dwellings per hectare. And then as it steps out, that drops to 45 and then 40 with more space on the outside. So yes, the along the Spine Road is where there is higher density with those taller buildings, but that's concentrated on that central core along the Spine Road.
Helen?
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about the amount of affordable housing, because, John, you mentioned 30%, and you mentioned 9 dwellings, which out of 231 doesn't sound like 30%, but I thought you might be able to help me understand that. Thank you.
That might have been because the mic dropped out. What I was saying is 30% of the 226 is 69 dwellings. So I've got 6 one-bed apartments, 35 two-bed dwellings, 25 three beds, and 3 4 beds of the affordable houses on phase 1. So that's 69 in total.
69, not 9. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, Martin, and then John.
Thank you. I've just got 2 questions, both sort of clarifications, really. So the first one is on highways. So at the moment, you've stated that there's sort of technical queries at the moment, which means that the highways haven't given their permission. So if highways don't give their permission, are those things not satisfied? Will that be sufficient to stop this development or require it to ensure that there is compliance along those things to satisfy highways? That's the first one.
Well, yeah, I think we've only just had it formally submitted. So I think there is a need to discuss it with the applicant and their highway consultant. Lots of it sounds quite technical stuff, and a lot of it might be supporting evidence to demonstrate that why they've come to the design they have, or some minor tweaks, particularly in the sort of public highway, that could allow the scheme to meet that technical assessment. So what I'm hoping is that we can have that discussion within the appeal and come to a revised solution that would address those highway concerns.
If I may, Councillor Piercy, ultimately it is now a matter for the inspector. So the Highways Authority will have the opportunity to make representations on the appeal. And if they don't make representations on the appeal, then as part of our processes, we will provide the inspector with the representations they've made to us. The inspector will have to be satisfied that the development meets the relevant tests. What John is suggesting is an entirely sensible approach, which is where the applicant takes an opportunity to review as much as they can as part of the appeal process. The appeal is currently scheduled to be heard by a public inquiry, which means if that proceeds, there'll be technical evidence presented by experts on that matter. Now, another sort of aim of this evening is to maybe limit the areas of disagreement. So what John has done is he set out to you quite clearly the main areas which are still outstanding. These relate sort of to highways and contributions. So, you know, we can imagine that being the focus of any hearing sessions, be that a public inquiry or be it downgraded to an informal hearing. But to answer your question, whether it will stop it in the tracks isn't something that we know. It's for the inspector to decide on that once he or she has heard all the evidence.
Thank you. And sorry, on my second question, so basically it's up to the inspector, and so it may or it may not be there. Cool. Just on the point about principle of development. So, because we've got so that is a scheme that's before us. So can that be changed because it's in principle in development? You know, it's not, or can it be, or you know, I guess that's a question in my mind. Is it possible to change what they have presented in terms of how high they are and the design and the spine road? Or is that essentially, this is it, and that's what the inspector is going to agree? Or is it just the principal say, well, we want to deliver so many houses in there, and it could be this, or it could be something else? So I just want to see how much leeway, how fixed is this particular plan, as opposed to what it may become, or potentially become, after consultation?
Yeah, at the moment that the appeal was submitted and validated by the planning inspectorate, the jurisdiction swapped from the local planning authority to the Secretary of State. So we will not, negotiate on an application the way that we might normally do. There's no means for us to now receive revised plans and go through public consultation. However, we've got Charlotte with us. There is something called the Wheatcroft Principle. The Wheatcroft Principle is that and I will be corrected if I'm wrong, I'm sure, but the Wheatcroft Principle is that the inspectorate may accept revised submissions where no interested party is prejudiced. So the applicant, or appellant I should say, may choose to undertake their own consultation process on a set of revisions to the scheme, but they would need to demonstrate to the planning inspector in their submissions what they have undertaken to make sure that everybody is informed of their proposals. I'll just check in with Charlotte to make sure that that is an accurate summary. And I've got the nod, so that's a bonus point to me. No working microphones, but the Wheatcroft Principle. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, and is that just clarification? Is that initiated by the applicant, or can it be only the applicant?
Yes, so that process would be initiated by the applicant via the planning inspectorate, and ultimately it'd be up to the inspector whether or not he or she considers that they would accept those amendments as part of the appeal process, and whether or not they will consider them. It ultimately depends on the extent of the amendments proposed. Generally, minor amendments inspectors may accept. Larger scale amendments affecting the red line boundary are generally not acceptable in my experience by inspectors. So yeah, unfortunately, again, it'll be up to the planning inspectorate whether or not they'll accept those amendments.
Yes, welcome to planning by appeal. It's messy. I've got John, and then I've got Kathy and Millie. I'll just try to bring it over
For the webcast, could you please try and use your microphone? Otherwise, nobody...
And Democratic Services are going to do it from up here, John, so they'll keep switching it back on for you.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank the previous speakers, in particular Cam Parish Council and also the Ward Councillor for Cam. It's it's been very helpful for me to understand a lot of the history, which having only just joined this.
Sorry, John, can I just interrupt quickly, because I know you're new to the committee. We're actually doing questions at the moment, so rather than debate, which comes later. So do you actually have a question?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm directed accordingly. Could I ask, has an inquiry date been set?
Yes, I got the letter late yesterday or early today, so it would be in October. So eight days sitting in October.
Yeah, and it kind of depends on our decision tonight, the exact timings, whether we decide that we want planning officers to actually fight the principal or not fight the principal. It could be downgraded to written submissions and such like. Griff or John, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, well, at the moment it's timetabled in for the full 8 days, but it depends if we can reach agreement on certain matters. It might not take the full amount, and if there's less to discuss, the scale and the number of days could be reduced.
And if I may just add one more thing, this is now entirely in the hands of the planning inspectorate. So whilst we might suggest that we need less time, it is a decision for the appointed inspector.
Yeah. Not that planning inspectors have massive amounts of free time, but yeah. I think I've got Kathy next, and then Millie. Anybody else? Helen?
Maya?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just asking a question to seek more clarity on exactly what we're voting on here tonight. Because, there we go. It seems that everyone who's spoken acknowledges that that there will be development on this site, though people have different ideas on exactly what that should look like. So the decision is with the planning inspectorate. So why are we voting tonight? Are the planning inspectors going to listen to this vote? What weight does this vote carry? If we vote yes, to go with the officer recommendation, does that mean we are supporting the exact detail of this proposal in front of us, or does it mean we're voting yes to the principle of development on this site? And if we vote no, does that mean we are expressing a desire that there is no development on this site?
Thank you. Yeah, if I may, I shall try and take those in turn. So the reason that we have brought this to committee this evening is because this application does not accord with the development plan. It is part of the draft allocation rather than our current development plan. So it is technically a departure. It is also a strategic allocation. So had we got to the position where officers were able to make a recommendation, that application was likely to have come to committee for a decision in accordance with our scheme of delegation. So we're bringing it to committee to make sure that we've got the correct authorisations to enter the proceedings on the appeal with the views of members taken into account. So it's a technicality really that it's coming to you tonight, and it is due to the nature of the appeal being submitted probably a bit early to bring it in front of you. John said that we've got an inquiry scheduled in October, so we're now working to a deadline and timeframe that is imposed on us. So what you're being asked to vote on tonight is whether or not you support the principle of development. As we've said, that doesn't comply with the local plan. So what that means is if we had resolved all of the technical issues which John set out earlier, would we in theory have granted a planning permission on this? We can't grant a planning permission. The inspector is the only person who can now give planning permission. If you vote no, you will be saying we would not have granted a planning permission if we were in a position to do so. And you would have to give the reasons why you would not have granted planning permission. That would then form the statement of case, and the authority would be taking that position in its defence of the appeal.
Sorry, is that saying we wouldn't have granted this exact planning permission or any planning permission that proposed development?
We're going for the any planning permission. As I said a minute ago, we don't think the scheme's quite ready to bring forward for a decision. As John set out, there will be days spent at this inquiry where we discuss highways, where we discuss contributions. So it's not neatly packaged at the moment for a decision. So I don't think it's fair to say we're voting on exactly what is there, because we haven't, got to the bottom of how all of that works. We are just saying to the inspector, these are all of the outstanding issues which, inspector, you need to grapple with and come to a decision on. But we do not object to the principle of the development, subject to these matters being resolved. So what we're effectively saying is, inspector, we invite you to resolve these issues.
As I said, welcome to planning by appeal. It's messy. There are all kinds of implications to which way you vote. If you were to vote, if you were to vote no, we don't agree with officer advice, then officers would have to go and they would have to defend, they would have to fight on the question of the principle of any development on this site of this scale. And there are implications to that, in that we're operating in a position of a tilted balance on this council where we don't have a 5-year land supply, and central government is effectively saying you have to build houses where the developers want to put them, whether they're in your plan, whether they're in a draft plan, whether they're outside settlement limits, unless you can come up with some really good reason not to, such as they're in the national landscape. And if we go in and fight and appeal on that basis, there are, for a start, there are resource implications. It would be very costly to fight a full-scale appeal on the principle. And there are also issues around not just what it would cost us to do that, but also if we were found to be acting unreasonable in the situation that we're in, the overall planning situation, in fighting the principle of a major development on a site which is allocated in our draft local plan, which is at examination, there is a possibility that we could have costs awarded against us. So there's all kinds of very messy implications to this, which is quite difficult to get your head around in a simplistic form. But I think I'm trying to sort of set a sort of general picture for you here. But shall we move on with questions? Kathy, are you okay with that for now anyway? I mean, this is really getting into debate a bit, actually. And that's me. I'm guilty. Hands up, sorry. Yes, I've got Millie and then I've got Helen.
So I think Jo Kendall probably hit this one on the head with the catch-22, didn't she? So what I'm hearing is that it's risky to turn it down, and there's nobody in this room that I've heard this evening speaking saying they're against development in this site. Were it to come before us as a planning permission, I think, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I would certainly have voted against it as designed. So we have to make a decision. Does John have any opportunity to negotiate about the actual construction and style of housing and the spacing, or are we literally handing over permission to John just to sort it out with highways and, who gets what in terms of funding? And as Kath has pointed out, we would be effectively approving this particular design. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, what we've got before us is the details for phase 1. So phase 2 and 3 would come back with another reserve matters. So there'd be an application and a consultation on the detailed design of those. But phase 1 is the details that are before us or before the appeal.
Phase 2, could that be expedited by the developer in the same way so that we're funneled down a track of no return?
Well, we'd have to see what happens at the time, but we'd have an outline permission and then it would be a reserve matters. So there wouldn't be the same strategic or principal issues which has held up this application, or the local plan issues that have made progress so slow on this one. So there would be that consultation ability for that more active engagement, but on a quicker timescale with the reserve matters.
One last thing, the spine road does seem to be quite a critical design feature. And this phase of building is not going to address that. Have I got that correct? So we would be driving in and exiting from the same point onto the road by the garage.
Yes, phase one has just one access, which
And
is the signalised junction on the A4135. What we can do, and I've raised it already with the developer, is look at a way of phasing it and get that highway input as well about how we can get the spine road to go in early for the rest of the development and connect through the other application, so you could get those two access points. But at the moment, we've got phase one with that single access. Yes.
Okay.
Chair, if I may, just to respond in a bit more detail to some of the questions by Councillor Hill. What happens with an appeal against non-determination is the inspector takes the role that the case officer normally would have. So when you have reports before you, John summarised it now, we take into account all the representations that are made to us. The planning inspectorate accepts representations on appeals. So all of these issues that are being raised by resident action groups or the parish councils, these bodies can make those representations directly to the planning inspectorate. And also, depending on where we go and whether we stay at public inquiry or whether it's a hearing, they do have an opportunity to take part in proceedings as well. So there's still the opportunity for these issues to be raised and the inspector to grapple with them in their decision.
Just one thing. In your experience, Griff, how likely is it that those appeals for some modifications would be listened to? Because you'll understand there's a lot of cynicism about planning processes generally, and it does rather feel like we're taking this on trust if we vote this through.
Sorry, Councillor Hill, are you asking me about the engagement of third parties?
I'm asking you how likely it is that if we put all our trust in the process, that yes, third parties' comments and recommendations would be listened to. How often do they actually get listened to? And how much faith could we have that there's still a debate to be had, or are we just handing over our fate?
I'll give you the same answer I'd probably give you if we were here in the room, but where a representation is made on a material planning consideration, then it holds weight in the decision-making process. So material planning considerations that are raised with the planning inspector, the planning inspector will need to address those in reaching their decision. Matters that are not material don't hold weight in the planning process. The presence of a neighbourhood plan is significant. That forms part of the statutory development plan, and the inspector will again need to give due weight to the policies within that. They hold the same weight as our local plan policies. So that is something that works in favour. And any representations which cross-reference neighbourhood plan policies, those policies are I've forgotten what I was saying now. I was trying to press a button with a smile. But yeah, I think you've got the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that the appeal is a planning process. As Griff said, the inspector is sitting in the position of the case officer, so the inspector isn't just going to nod something through on just... and third parties can take their representations to the appeal. Parish council can make representations to the appeal. Planning inspectors are individuals. They will have different approaches to things, but it is still a planning process, and changes can be taken, as Griff outlined, and an inspector can accept them, and conditions will be worked out and all that kind of thing. So it's important to remember, it is still a planning process. It's a way of processing a planning application. Did you have another question, Millie?
Well, just to build on what you just said, because of course this isn't a process I've gone through before. Where does that appeal take place?
So the venue is organised by the local planning authority at the expense of the local planning authority. So it's very likely to be somewhere in this building, so or another council-owned property.
Right, I've got Helen and then Dave.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Hill's questions have probably answered some of mine already, but just for clarity, I picked up that submission of this application was in 2021. That is 4 years ago. So am I correct in my understanding that it is the delays to the approval of a local plan by the inspectorate that has caused the non-determination of this application?
Yes, we've been working with the developer and the highway authorities, particularly on the mitigation required for junction 14. Timing of the application submitted as well was probably pre the draft plan, and they probably anticipated a quicker timeline for that as well. So in effect, it's been waiting for the planning position and the highway motorway mitigation to become clear.
It feels very unfortunate that this has all been caught up in by processes that are beyond our control and out of our control, and also reassuring to hear that the appeal is a planning process and will happen locally, and where the local community and local, the parish council and other community bodies can make their representations at that stage as well. And I think that covers.
Yes, obviously the developers have been involved with this site from many years ago. As we were going through the development of the draft plan, they would have seen it going through the strategic land assessment process. They would have seen that our officers were finding the evidence for this as a good strategic site, and so they were moving that. And big sites like this are a long process, and it hasn't been helped by the fact that we got stuck in examination thanks to issues with the motorway junctions, which are being ironed out, but it's very, very slow. Yes, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. Mine was the same question as Councillor Fenton, actually. How do we end up here? So I've had that answered. Thank you.
Yes, Millie.
What are the implications for SIL contributions of ending up in this particular position as opposed to going through the normal process?
The application is not a strategic site with an adopted local plan, therefore it's likely to be still liable. So we've still got to discuss the obligations that have been requested with the developer and the interested parties, which we'll do into the appeal. But it's likely that there would be SIL plus a top up of any other obligations that meet the tests for obligations. But there's still a bit more work to do on that to identify what is required, what meets those tests.
Yeah, I think we're talking about several million, and the parish should be entitled to a fair chunk because they've got an NDP, haven't they? Any more questions? Do I have anybody else down? Yeah, yes, Terry.
Sorry to lower the tone slightly. It seems to me that, there are some negative things here from the developer. They don't seem to be cooperating fully. I noticed also that amongst many, unclear aspects of this. Severn Trent have not really been very helpful either, except there will be a pumping station for foul drainage. Do we have any idea where that's going to be? I presume, you know, how is this going to be? I'm just thinking of Coley and our visit to Coley some months ago and sewage. It's on page 50.
Yes, the development does need a pumping station. I can't exactly remember where it is, but it's in the sort of middle section of the development. So yes, it will be required, and the developer will need all the necessary consents from the water company to connect and provide the necessary infrastructure for that.
Sorry, just dealing with a quick legal question. Yes, Martin.
Sorry, yeah, just to pick up on the question, the last but one. Still money. I mean, you've given us the figure, which is great. So what would be the comparative amount, do we think, if we went through the local plan and I guess section 106 process? From a monetary perspective, is the developer going to pay more this way, or will they be able to this way through contribution to local infrastructure?
Well, it's probably not really something I can answer. I don't have the numbers to know that, and we've got to determine or the inspector has to determine the application as it is in this current status. So I wouldn't be able to give you almost a hypothetical answer.
If I may, Chair, it's also not, it's not a hypothesis they need to go down, because it's not a strategic site, it's not allocated in a local plan, and therefore, in the absence of saying strategic sites are section 106 and non-strategic sites are SIL, it just becomes a SIL site. The more pertinent question for the inspector will be, what top-up do we need to SIL? And that's going to be the key question. So I think the SIL receipt, whatever it may be, is guaranteed. It's the additional funding on top of that, which the requester would need to demonstrate why and how it passes the SIL tests. But the application of the SIL tests will be a task for the inspector.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Right. Any more questions? Yes, Kath.
Really quick one. If we vote yes to this, and it gives our officers the ability to input into the planning inspector's inquiry, what are you going to say?
Yeah. I don't think it's as simple as saying, are we going to put input into the inquiry or not? We will be engaging in that inquiry throughout. So what we will be doing is presenting to the inspector all the things that we've been discussing tonight. So what contribution requests have been made? What has the Highway Authority said about X, Y, and Z? And we will use our technical expertise to sort of lead on that. So the Highways Authority is the technical expertise. Their technical evidence will go in front of the inspector. The inspector determines on that. So I'm going to say that we will be involved in that inquiry. What we are asking tonight is, do you want there to be a planning balance evidence as to the weight that we've attached to things? You know, do we think that do we think that the highway requests are insurmountable, and therefore the planning balance falls that we should refuse it? So that's the type of thing that we would be doing if that was members' decision. If members say yes tonight, we'll be going into the inquiry, fully engaging with it. We're legally required to positively and proactively engage in all of our activities, and we'd be then trying to, you know, engage in those discussions with the applicant about how we can get the development in the best place that the inspector can just focus on the key pertinent issues.
Yeah, our planning officers will be, as Griffith said, engaging as if they were, well, as the case officer will be arguing at the appeal. The only thing they won't be arguing on is the principle of whether development should go on this site, development of this scale, which means that it can be hopefully a shorter, less costly appeal process. But we still will be making our representations just as the parish council can make their representations. Yes, Millie. And hopefully we can start coming to the end of questions and get on with
It feels a little bit like flogging a dead horse, doesn't it? So what I'm hearing is a lot of talk about detail on highways, which will, in my view, slightly take itself because nobody wants to build really dangerous roads. So that will be technical detail. What my parish council and representative from the CAM Community Action Group are concerned with, obviously they don't want dangerous roads either, but they're concerned with the aesthetics, the experience of living on that site, what it does to the wider feeling for the village. And I'm not hearing that that's something that the officers will go strongly into bat about. Have I misunderstood?
Yes. Broadly, officers think that the scheme is broadly acceptable in terms of the design of phase one. Now, the development, I don't think we were expecting to be in this position. You know, the issues about the strategic road network are complicated. They are multifaceted. It's not just us and our local plan. We're dealing with national highways. We're dealing with two local highway authorities. We're dealing with central government. It's not just junction 14, it's also junction 12. So we are surprised to be in this position, but there's a lot to do on a planning application. And, you know, these big issues are ones that need to be resolved because that is a matter of principle. You know, it doesn't matter what it looks like on the inside if you can't get to it in the first place. What John has said as well is we are only, phase one is the full development. So phases 2 and 3 will come back to the local planning authority where hopefully we'll be given due process to apply our full considerations to those elements of the scheme.
Going on a long time and people do have homes to go to, but so what I'm hearing there is that there is a chance that this plan goes through as is. When we get to phase 2 and 3, doesn't that mean a principle has been established that we can have 3-story high, quite dense, you know, won't we then find we're in the position of, oh, well, if this wasn't there, then we would have been able to change it, but now we can't. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, I've got you down next, Terry. Okay, you got an answer?
So you can see this plan on the screen now. This is the indicative plan they've submitted to identify the densities. So the outline section would be the areas to the top of the drawing. So we have an indicative plan that shows where the more dense areas will be as a darker blue. So the outline scheme will set those sort of wider parameters, but the more detailed stuff will come back to us and we'll consider the detailed layout and the designs.
Yes, Terry.
So we could tonight make it clear that if the appellant doesn't make small amendments to their plan as they are submitting it to the inspectorate, if it remains as dense as it is now, we will be looking extremely carefully at their subsequent detailed plans, which we can amend in terms of design and density. Is that what we can do tonight?
Any reserved matters would have to be in accordance with the outline. So the outline, if it was to set parameters for density, then your subsequent applications would accord with that.
So we have a situation where the overall density is objected to by many people, and that's sort of fixed at this point. Going forward, we can't make an opinion on that even.
I mean, it's for members in their normal way to come to a view on the acceptability of the scheme, as we would if we were in DCC in any other situation. Whether you think that goes to the principle of the matter, or whether that is, I'm thinking a little bit off the hoof here, but you know, you might, I mean, we'll side-eye Charlotte here because she might want to correct me here, but we're not doing a grant refuse, here are our conditions, here are our refusal reasons. So, you know, this is DCC, but maybe also a bit more like one of our policy committees, and, you know, you could create a recommendation to give officers an indication of the actions that you'd like us to take. But that's very much for you members of this committee to come to a view on.
I think it sounds perhaps like there potentially are some questions about the layout of the phase one scheme. Maybe not necessarily the density, but perhaps just the layout. Particular elements that you might suggest might be in other locations. So on page, I think it's page, let me just check, of the report, the officers have set out what they suggest. Just get the page number. Page 55 of your papers, the officers have set out there what they think the recommendation should be for you to vote on, and they've suggested that they recommend that officers don't contest the principle of the appeal, subject to officers negotiating a legal agreement to secure the appropriate planning obligations and agreeing a list of appropriate conditions. Now, perhaps you might want to, depending on the debate, and obviously considering what might be reasonable and justified, you might want to add a few items to that list for officers to potentially negotiate and raise during the course of the appeal. And those items might relate to matters of layout, scale, 2 or 3 story dwellings, that kind of, and then officers can be informed to then raise that through the appeal process. Subject to it being considered justified and reasonable to do so.
And if we did that, if we gave that steer, that wouldn't have unfortunate, costly implications in terms of, you know, we're not effectively opposing the appeal, we're just giving the officers control over negotiations in the future. We're giving them the steer in those directions.
Yeah, I think what that would do would inform the officers' submissions to the appeal process. Those submissions can then be taken on board by the inspector and the appellant, who can then, as we said earlier, there is potential to make some minor amendments. It might be that through the process of submission of the council's statement of case, raising those points, the appellant may consider, they might not, but they may consider then making some minor amendments to the scheme to reflect those, particularly if they're raised by the council and also other parties, as they also have the chance to raise those issues. So that would then be part of the appeal process to negotiate and determine. So that is within the scope of members to do tonight.
If I just may, I think the key words that Charlotte said, we're talking about justified and reasonable. We are at an award of costs when we are unreasonable and fail to justify our position. So I completely agree with everything that Charlotte was just saying. But for you, Councillor Kinnison, I think that is your key test there. Are we being reasonable and can we justify our requests?
Thank you. That's a welcome clarification and something I think we can think of as a group, think about as a group.
Yeah, I think the big question the big test of reasonableness is what we're really looking at tonight is, would it be reasonable to oppose the application on principle at appeal, given the overall planning picture that we're stuck in at the moment? Whether it's reasonable to be making other representations of the sort you're talking about, I think is a much lower level of question of reasonableness. Where are we with questions? I think I've got Demelza and then Dave.
I think you answered a lot of what I was about to bring up, which was recommendations. I have to say what CAM Parish Council's put in as their recommendations was fantastic, as well as the community support, community action group. For me, this is a combination of a few things. It's not just highways, it's not just density. I think the design is quite frankly horrible. The open spaces, etc. Can we provide that list?
Demelza, can I just jump in and just remind you that we're still in questions?
I know, I was just coming into that.
Okay.
So my question was the word list. Can we provide that list to you of some suggestions, potentially also playing into what CAM Parish Council have provided, because I think the thought of this going through is terrible for everyone around.
It is, members, for you to make a motion containing what in it you think is reasonable and justified. Officers will comment on that if they think it is unreasonable and unjustified, but ultimately it's for you to make that motion.
Dave, I've got you now.
Thank you, Chair. It does seem to me that we are getting into an urgency around debates and wanting to have more of a conversation than ask questions. My request to you would be, can we please now move to debate and then move quickly to the vote? And I might open that debate by...
Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor. We need a motion before we can move into debate. So it's up to the Chair if he's got any further questions.
Any further question? Helen, you had your hand? No? Okay. Right. As Griff says, I was just about to say we do need to get a motion. Does anybody feel desperately they want to leap in to recommend officer advice with add-ons? Yes, Helen.
Yes, I'm happy to recommend officer advice to accept the development principle on the site. But also I feel like the mood here is very much that we want to recognise the concerns of the local community and have those concerns noted to be put forward and addressed or addressed with the inspectorate. And I think additionally, part of it that strikes me as really significant is this issue of the Spine Road being completed as part of phase 1 so that there is a through route and that it's wide enough for buses to get down, because if we build that road and we can't ever get a bus down it, we have just completely limited the future potential for public transport and therefore active travel in the area. So
okay.
I can't remember if that was specifically listed on, because I know CAM Parish Council had 6 points that they listed very clearly, and we need those 6, plus we need to make sure the Spine Road issue is covered.
Yeah, I was going to say, rather than perhaps get into working up our own shopping list, we ask officers what their feeling is about whether they understand what it is you're trying to get to.
Thank you, Chair. That wasn't the point that I wanted to come on. I wanted to come in specifically about the Spine Road. Can we just pop to the site plan, So we have to, thank you. We are only looking, I'm looking forward to council meeting on Thursday where this goes on, there's 70 of you, wherever it is. We are only looking at land that is in with the red edge of the planning application site. Now, when John showed you this plan earlier, the land in blue in the top right corner has been disaggregated from this application. It's part of the allocation, but there is no planning application on that at the moment. So you cannot ensure the delivery of the spine road through this application because it goes in land that's not in goes through land that is not in control of the applicant.
Was that disaggregation done when the application was submitted?
Both applications were submitted at the same time. The applicant for this application, Persimmon, has pulled theirs away. So we still have the Robert Hitchens application in, but they're on a different timeline because this is now at appeal. So we can look at the phasing and look to bring the spine road early, but purely on this application, we couldn't say that it would go all the way through because part of it is outside of this application.
Do you understand that, Councillor?
Not really. Are you saying that we can't ever guarantee that the spine road will go all the way through? Is that what you're saying?
No, we're not saying that. We're saying we rely on a different application to complete the spine road. So on this plan, we can get the spine road all the way through the orange land, but the connection through the blue land is subject to another application. We have that application in before us, but that applicant hasn't chosen to go to appeal because they understand the complexities of where we're getting to, and we've got a more relaxed time frame with that one.
Yes, Terry.
Yes, so we could, though, say that we want the portion of the spine road which is in this application to be completed. And that it should be wide enough, because a bus equal car plus bike lane?
Sorry, Councillor Kinnison, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We've got...
No problem.
Councillor Fenton has got the floor. She's in the process of making a motion. So, Councillor Fenton is making a motion. So far, what I've got is that it's officer and vice plus the 6 points of Cam Parish Council. Whether I manage to write 6 down quickly enough or not, or whether I'm going to have to replay the video.
There's a report. They made a written submission to us, so we have that.
So sorry, Chair.
Could I suggest that you continue to propose officer advice with the proviso that officers come up with a list to be okayed by chair and vice chair of the points, including the ones from Parish Council, that they picked up from discussion, well, from questions backed up by the video record, to be agreed later on, rather than us trying to actually work out an exact shopping list now. Griff is desperate to jump in.
Yeah, Chair, I don't think that's what Councillor Fenton's saying with respect. Councillor Fenton's saying that we've got the representations from Cam Parish Council, and the summary point that was made in public speaking is effectively what she's proposing that we put into your motion. So I think, I don't think there's much need for us to do toing and froing. I can check with John that he's received those representations. He's nodding to say that they have. So I'm quite happy that we know what the motion is that's being made.
Yeah, I just meant for the final wording to be approved by chair and vice chair, once you've actually, rather than try and work out exact wording now, which I think we could get bogged down in. Would you be okay with that?
It's a question for Helen.
I did note it down.
Hang on, legal's got some brief points she could summarise, perhaps.
I did generally note down some of the points they made. If it would help for me to just summarise them quickly so you could sort of confirm yes or no if to the general context of those. I think the first point was regarding I think the parish council noted the density should be reduced and a more balanced layout. I think they wanted the site to be more integrated with improved pedestrian access. They wanted the public rights of way to be acknowledged in the design. In terms of the connectivity, they also mentioned the cycle options and they wanted those to be included. They wanted greater consideration of the neighbourhood development plan and the design code. They didn't want any 3-storey homes. They wanted that removing. And they wanted a better balance of housing and green space. Does that...
Chair, if I may, we do have the representations that Cam Parish Council have made. John's got them on his screen in front of him. So if members are happy to go on the presentation that was made in public speaking and the written submissions that were made to the case officer, then unless Charlotte disagrees with me, I think we have a plausible motion on the table and we're now looking for it to get seconded.
Yeah, I'm aware we're getting people with questions, but as Griff said, we're in the middle of formulating Helen's proposal. Are you okay with what Griff's just outlined, Helen?
I think I am. I'm happy with that, except it doesn't specifically mention the width of a spine road to enable a bus service to use it.
If I may, Councillor Fenton. If I may, it's possible for you to include that in your motion. So your motion could say officer advice plus the points of parish council and the increase of the width of the road to make it bus friendly, for want of better words, at whatever time of day it is.
So, yes, are you okay with that, Helen? For me to seek a seconder on that? Sorry, can we... Sorry, we need to sort this out without separate meetings forming. Are you okay with that, Helen? Did I seek a seconder on that? Yes, I am. Okay, anybody prepared to second that? In which case, yeah, Millie, are you seconding? Okay, so I was looking at Millie and thinking Terry. Right, so Millie, you're seconding. I know. Okay, so seconded by Councillor Hill, in which case we can go into debate. And as the seconder, Millie, you've got the right to kick off, but Dave seems to be, do you want to allow Dave to get in? Because I think his head's going to explode if he doesn't.
Thank you. And thank goodness we are now in debate. It's purely about the density issue. This is not a dense site, as I mentioned earlier on. It's 795 across nearly 30 hectares, and that's barely 27 dwellings per hectare. That is only just into medium density. So my request would be that we take the density point out. It might be higher density than elsewhere in the area, but it is not high density on the definition of the accepted definition of the planning fraternity, as I understand it.
I think procedurally, you would, if you wanted to take that out, you would need to propose it as an amendment, and then we'd have to debate that and vote on it. How seriously do you feel about that?
It's a simple amendment, and I would that we amend just by taking out the density point and leave all the other pieces in.
Well, unless Helen was prepared to. If Helen was prepared to take that as a friendly amendment.
No, I don't take it as a friendly amendment, because what I'm concerned about is that the concerns of a local community are stated clearly to the planning inspectorate at appeal level. So whether I agree with the detail of density being medium, high or low, that's irrelevant. I feel that Cam Parish Council are telling us that they perceive this as a over-dense and overdeveloped development, and therefore that needs to be considered by the planning inspectorate to make the decision on that. So I'd like to leave that in there.
If I may, and I don't really like to infringe on debate too much, but I think there's a difference here between density and the 3-storey dwellings. And I wonder whether exploring that in your debate might unpack some of those issues.
Yes, I didn't really have an answer from you, Dave, on what you want to do about possibility of an amendment.
I'm happy to be overruled. But I'm happy to be overruled.
So you're not pursuing that as an amendment? Okay. In which case, I've got Terry and Millie, not necessarily in that order. In fact, actually, I think, sorry, I did prevent Millie from speaking when she's seconded, so I'm going to take Millie first and then Terry.
I'll be brief. We've flogged this horse to death, haven't we? And these on-off microphones are driving us nuts. My concern is the CAM community. I am very pleased to hear Councillor Fenton acknowledge the feelings of the community, because CAM has taken more than its fair share of development and it's still somehow managing to smile. And it would be very nice if we could create a situation where the building enhances people's lives and doesn't just breed endless resentment of the planning process and government edicts coming down from on high. I think we should keep in the density, but I wouldn't want it there if it would undermine officers' ability to be taken seriously when they're negotiating. Because if Councillor Matthews is correct and there is literally a slide rule involved, then I wouldn't want that one point to be the thing that undermined us. I think much more important is green spaces, snickets, which I think didn't actually get mentioned this evening as anything particular, but CAM has a long history of snicket pathways, weaving in and out of its community. And they're very treasured little bits of CAM. I would like to see it feel. I want to imagine you arguing for something that you're standing in the middle, imagining the feel of the place, not just the mathematics of it. And so I probably will support this tonight, although I've toyed with the idea of abstaining, but that feels a bit nakedly political to me, so I can hold my head up and say I've abstained. I actually think I would like this really hard fought for by officers, because it's coming, and I really want them to gird their loins and fight for the community to get a nice development that we can all be proud of in the longer term.
Yeah. On a personal note, I always find it odd, the concept of abstaining on planning determinations. I mean, that's our job, is to make a decision one way or the other. I mean, you wouldn't let a planning inspector get away with saying, oh, I can't make my mind up on this, I'm going to abstain. Anyway, sorry. I got Terry now.
A question, but I trust the chair and vice chair implicitly, but is there any precedent for having a local district councillor as part of the final decision-making process on your list that you are going to be checking, or am I just being completely over the top here?
Chair, if I may, as I understand Councillor Fenton's motion, we aren't seeking the final approval of the wording by the chair or vice chair, because we have this representation by Cam Parish Council. So we are taking that. James is trying to get your attention. Not sure.
Sorry, Alice is our legal monitoring officer, so I think it's probably important that if she has a point she wants to raise, we listen to her.
Just very briefly, it will need to be the vice chair and chair only, otherwise we risk this becoming a subcommittee which isn't properly constituted. So I'm comfortable with it being those two, but any further than that I would have to raise a point of governance.
Yes, I was going to say I don't feel very comfortable with widening it out, but custom is chair and vice chair.
Sorry, that's not the proposal that's on the table. The proposal.
I thought that was the question that Alice was addressing.
It's not the proposal that's
No, I understand. Yes, I know. We are getting axle deep in stuff. Right, where are we actually at now then? Okay. I've got Demelza. Did you want to come in now?
Sorry, yeah, now in debate, not questions. I just wanted to say at the start of this, I was very, very concerned about where it was going to go. I was really concerned that we were going to get into a position where we were going to let this with the inspectors and potentially lose all of the momentum that the residents have tried to gain through their parish council and their action group. I feel an awful lot more comfortable knowing that we've changed the process and had a motion added by Councillor Fenton to include the position of the residents. I have to say, I reiterate again, I think they've spoken very, very well tonight. They have not come to this table and said, we don't want any more development, which is what they've had on their table for many, many years. So I think taking their opinions forward and our team fighting that corner is really, really important. So whilst I think it's a very tricky decision, I still have concerns that this plan could go through. It still deeply concerns me. I do feel more comfortable in the knowledge that we've made the motion to include our residents' opinions.
Okay. Are we moving towards a vote now? That's anybody else? I think I have to ask Helen if she would like to sum up.
Yes, I was also very concerned about the idea that we were in a catch-22 situation, that we either had to give our officers an impossible task of arguing against the principle of development on this site, when in fact all of us are open to the principle of development on this site, when done in the right sort of way. That felt like not the approach that I would want to vote for. And then the other option was to reject, was just to accept this plan wholesale, which I was deeply uncomfortable with when I heard the representations from the parish council. So I feel we've worked something out here that is perhaps the best we can do tonight. So we've got the additional 6 points from Cam Parish Council, plus we've got the additional point about the width of a spine road to allow a bus service to run up it. And yeah, perhaps that's all I need to say, other than just encouraging everyone from the local community to participate fully in the appeal process in October, and make sure that as a community we all work together to make this development somewhere that is positive for Cam and for the local community. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take it to a vote now. So we're hoping the buttons are going to work. So it's, does everybody click? Sorry, we're doing hands, are we? Okay, just, do you want to summarise what the motion is, or is everybody clear what the motion is, or do they need it summarised? Everybody's okay. So basically it's officer advice with the add-ons that have been discussed, okay? So it's habit.
So it's 4 against abstain. So the first vote's going to be for 4.
It's up, yeah, hand up if you agree with the officer recommendation with the add-ons. And that is unanimous. Yep. Okay, right. Does anybody feel we need to have another break? Yep, I'm hearing 1 or 2 whispers of yes, please. So 5 minutes. Okay. Microphone's working. Got the reading glasses on. Right, final item. Land north of Bath Road, Leonard Stanley, erection of 34 low-carbon dwellings, including 35 affordable units, vehicular access off Bath Road and associated public open space, including community orchard, landscaping and infrastructure. Case officer is Eleanor Dollimore, who I think is ready to introduce her report. Okay, Eleanor? Right, off you go.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for a very nice introduction to the chair. I know it's quite late, so my presentation looks just to remind me so I don't forget things. So I'm here to introduce the land north of Bath Road at Leonard. That's so annoying. There we go. So those who were on site will remember standing in a beautiful field of corn, but this is what it looks like from the air. You will notice that the red line boundary is drawn away from the watercourse as discussed on site. The proposed scheme is for 34 low-carbon dwellings. 12 of those are to be affordable units. We've got access from Bath Road. We've seen where it was on site, but for those who were not, it is in... I can't see my mouse, but you can see it right along the... in between, onto the main road. We've got large areas of public open spaces. We've got small community orchard, which links to a neighbouring orchard, and we've got improved public right-of-way. So affordable housing is a very important addition to the site. I've included a drawing where you can see where they are on site. It's really annoying. That's fine. The blue ones are the... Okay, there we go. The blue ones are the share ownership and the red ones are social rent, 10 years. They are not clustered more than they allowed to be. The principle of development is has some interesting quirks. We are located outside of the settlement boundary of Leonard Stanley, but because the Stroud District Council is not able to demonstrate 5 years worth of housing land supply, we are now planning through a tilted balance. The most important policies which restrict the development in the area are policies CP2, CP3 and CP15. But they are considered out of date as per the NPPF, and that is the tilted balance, where we're going to balance the benefits of the scheme against the conflict with those policies. So on this map, you can see the outline of the settlement boundary of Leonard Stanley, and the yellow outline is the application site. So that is for your information as to what the limits are. So now we're moving to the technical elements of the application. This is the highways access onto Bath Road. There was quite considerable issue with the parking on the road, but there's no parking on the road as a result of this development. There'll be 70 parking spaces, including visitor spaces on site. We will be doing improvements to the existing footpath, well, not the applicant. The internal road will be offered for adoption, and the details of pedestrian crossing and footways have been conditioned. So there is currently a footway on one side, but there's no crossing to connect it to the other footway further down the line, and that is what has been conditioned, the details of. The layout and the design are fairly standard. We have, this is just an indication of a street scene. So the view A is from the Bath Road, and the view B is from the public right-of-way. This is how the units will probably look like. What you're looking at the moment, the stone building on a top right, no, yes, top right corner, is one of the affordable units. I think that they're the flats. So they are all of quite high quality and materials. They are designed to be 10-year blind across the development, including the affordable units. That's why some of them are in stone and some are in brick. When we were on site, there was a question about non-permeable surfaces on site. So this is the map. It isn't anything out of ordinary. We have the roads, which are tarmacked, and then we have the drives, which are tarmacked. At the back of the houses, we see some paving, but majority of the site remains permeable. Big issue would be a landscape and visual impact. We are outside of the settlement, so we do have to carefully consider it. There's several views into and out of the site to the surrounding Cotswold area of national beauty, now landscape. National landscape. So we see those who were on site, we were standing right at the bottom by the stream, at the bottom of the public right-of-way. So the view back towards Leonard Stanley is the one we see. So at the moment, do you recall? Another important view is that from Bath Road. So this is the existing view with the TPO tree, nice and beautifully seen. And behind we see what the development will look like. You will notice that the hedge remains. There's no removal of the hedge except for the small section to create the access to the site. We've got several heritage assets in a close proximity of the site. I took a liberty to take screenshots of them from Google Earth and other websites. We do not consider that the development will result in the impact to the actual listed buildings, but there will be a certain level of harm to the setting of these buildings. However, as per my report, I have covered that. All harm was considered to be less than substantial and is outweighed in the balance by the provision of housing. In the terms of ecology and biodiversity, all the surveys have been undertaken in the correct seasons. They have been agreed to by the relevant officers. The local planning authority agrees with the baseline assessment of the existing habitat values in order to calculate the BNG. However, due to the complexity of the BNG solution proposed on site, we will be seeking further delegation to deal with the actual details and a future discharge. This may include changes to the wording of conditions before we issue the decision. However, we do have sufficient information to demonstrate that the biodiversity net gain objective, which is the 10% gain, can be achieved on site. The impact on the special areas of conservation will be mitigated through financial contributions. In terms of sustainability, the low carbon dwelling proposed will be all fitted with air source heat pumps indicated on this drawing. The fabric approach to the design is also being followed. The drawing also indicates that solar panels will be fitted to every single unit on site. The EV charging points are also proposed and shown, but they are also secured through building regulations. We've received the draft head of terms, but there is a real draft. Things have changed since I made this presentation. We are seeking delegated power to deal with all the legal agreements for the BNG and affordable housing and so on. This is all covered in my report as well. Now, the decision-making, as I outlined, is going to be through the planning balance. So this is the wording taken from the NPPF. We do not consider that any of the footnote 7 applies to the site. Therefore, we are looking at the economic, social and environmental benefits associated with the provision of market housing. That is in context of not having enough housing in a district for next 5 years. Provision of affordable housing, and also the fact that the affordable housing is above the provision required by our policy. The enhancement to the public right-of-way are given some weight in the decision-making. At the moment, the footpath can get quite muddy, but its improvement will allow those with the reduced mobility to get further out into the countryside. There will be a level of significant gains in biodiversity net gain across select habitats on site, but as I said, we know they will be significant, but we don't know the exact percentage. So all these benefits must be weighed or seen in the conflicts with the policy we have. Those conflicts are identified in my report in more detail, but they can be summarized as that the market housing proposed on site does not comply with our housing needs assessment. It has mostly 4-bedroom houses and only two-bedroom houses in the market mix. However, the affordable mix fully complies. That is important to note. There's a distinction there. The site is outside of the settlement development limit, but it abuts it on 3. We have identified harm to the character and appearance of the surrounding area in so far that it loses its openness. And the lower end of the less than substantial harm to the setting of 2 listed buildings has been identified. That is outweighed also by the provision of housing. As officers, it is our professional opinion that the planning permission should be granted. However, from you, we are seeking further authority to deal with the exact wording of conditions. And as I outlined, biodiversity net gain issues and legal agreement issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Helena. Okay, public speaking. We've got ward members. I've got Councillor Marissa Godfrey and Councillor Steve Hineside. Who's going first? Marissa? Okay. You don't have a time limit, but time is getting on, so
I'll be making it
brevity
quick.
will be appreciated.
Okay, so I know what I say today will unlikely make a difference to the outcome. But as one of 2 district councillors for the Stanleys, I wanted to stand with the Leonard Stanley community, and I wanted to say something. There is beautiful countryside in the Stanleys. This field is one that is valued and loved by the local community and is home to wildlife. The decision made today will have negative ramifications for the existing local community and affect irrevocably the nature and biodiversity of the area. Once this field is gone, it's gone. And it will be gone forever. Please consider these things when you cast your votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Chair. So these aren't necessarily to express my own opinions, but they're to reflect the strong, deeply held views of residents in Leonard Stanley community regarding this application. I want to start with the site visit that many of your members undertook. I think we probably couldn't have got a worse day to illustrate the community benefit of the field than that one day. So scorching hot, monocrop growing through the field. And I think it doesn't reflect how deeply it is used and valued by the community. I mentioned on that visit how my inbox is filled up with residents who use this field daily and who really value this field. And I think the case officer quipped that it was too hot for dog walkers that day, but it would otherwise almost certainly have bumped into people out there walking their dogs. I think in planning terms, we talk about sort of infill as if this is sort of a natural, logical place to place housing, you know, got housing either side. And I think this, in this specific case, misrepresents the nature of the Stanleys and what they are as a community. So one of the defining features of King and Leonard Stanley is the green fingers that go into the heart of where people live, and it gives people with limited mobility access to those green spaces. And I think that's a really key thing that's been deteriorated over recent years in the village. So I feel like it does fundamentally continue to affect the character of the village, of where we live, and the nature of where we live. Now, I mean, it's been touched upon before that obviously, if this had come up before, we would have been projecting it out of hand because it's not in the old local plan, it wasn't in our new local plan. It's very evidently not where we as a council would like to be building houses, like that goes without saying. But I think what's useful is to go back to that sort of 2017 rejection when it came back on appeal then about why it was rejected, and it was saying that the balance then was that the harm it was causing did outweigh any potential provision. I think tonight the parish council is going to ask you about what protections from encroachment communities like ours have now. And if I'm honest, I don't think I've got a compelling answer to that. And I think one of the questions you've got to ask yourself tonight is whether you've got a compelling answer to that, about what protections that we have as a community now. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's very clear that I don't think anybody in this room would say this is their ideal choice of where to be building houses. I think from the residents who use and really value this field and its wider opening out into wider countryside as well. From the parish council who you'll hear from shortly, he's consistently opposed this through to successive council representations to say that this isn't in our local plan, this isn't where we want it. So I guess the only question now is whether to accept it on the likelihood that it'll then be forced upon us later down the line anyway, or whether we take a stand along our principles and our previous plans about where we think housing should be and where it's appropriate to be building housing. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we've got the Leonard Stanley Parish Council Clerk, Irene Litton. You will have a time limit, I'm afraid, 4 minutes. The counter will be up on the screen, and I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll have to cut you off if you go over, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear Chair and members of the committee, first I'd like to acknowledge the challenging position in which both the planning officer and your control committee now. The recent changes in national planning policy, combined with Stroud District Council's current local plan position, have undoubtedly complicated this decision-making process. Until very recently, the application would likely have been straightforward in terms of refusal, following the clear recommendation made by the Council's Planning Strategic Officer in October 2024. However, the current recommendation for approval, based on the tilted balance approach, remains a subjective judgment. While I appreciate the complexities involved, I respectfully urge the committee to consider the alternative. Development on this site has already been tested at appeal. In the 2017 decision, the planning inspector concluded, and I quote, However, in considering this appeal on its merits, the provision of affordable housing, together with other benefits of the scheme, would be insufficient to outweigh the unacceptable harm that would be caused to the character and appearance of the surrounding area. This is a compelling objection, and considering the development plan as a whole, my overall conclusion is that this proposal would not be a sustainable form of development. It's not moderate harm, it's unacceptable harm. That remains a powerful and relevant. If a scheme that has been previously found to cause unacceptable harm to the countryside cannot now be defended, one must ask what protection the rural environment has left. On behalf of Leonard Stanley residents, and in the interest of countryside preservation, I ask this committee to stand firm and refuse this application. Let the current conditions properly be tested through the appeal process if necessary. Should a planning inspector ultimately decide to allow this development, then at least Stroud District Council can justifiably state that it sought to uphold its commitment to protecting the rural landscape, and that any resulting harm stems from national policy, not from local choice. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Right, and speaking in opposition, we have Andrew MacDonald. Again, you'll have 4 minutes and the counter will be up on the screen.
Use this button. Hi, my name is Andrew MacDonald. I live in Leonard Stanley, live at 27 Waters, which right borders this field, so that's my position. You can understand that I've probably got a few objections to the permission, but I obviously know that it's a process that we're going through. There's lots of objections that I've got, some of which have been talked about already today. I'm just going to highlight 3 or 4 of them. And as I say, most of them have already been covered, but I'd still like to the opportunity to go through them. There's also a couple of applications touched on that have been through for this, relevant to this application. So there's a couple of applications which I've got references for if we need them later. So my first point is absolutely, we've already talked about it. It's outside the settlement development limit, both in the local plan and the revised one. The planning strategy officer in the case officer's report, there's a lot of thorough examination of the core policies, etc. in that plan, and there's a lot of objections to that plan, and in fact the planning strategy officer recommends refusal of this this application. And it's nice to hear that you guys, when you were debating the CAM application, held some of those core policies and the local plans with, you know, where, so hopefully you will have a similar opinion with this one. And I think, you know, that those local plans are there for a reason, and if this decision goes against those local plans, it does make a bit of a mockery of that whole process, and you know, speaking personally, it looks like a complete waste of taxpayers' money. You know, but that's a personal opinion, obviously. The second point is already being made by the parish council. The application made in 2015 and the later appeal in 2017, both of which were refused due to the unacceptable harm to the character and nature of the village. The officer in this application's case study, case officer's report, recommends again that the application is refused because of the very same application is going to give a similar detrimental effect to the character and nature of the village. So you know, why is it acceptable now? The third point is relevant to a planning application that was made earlier this year. So after I think after some of the governmental changes that have come through for 22 houses in Leonard Stanley at a different site near the school. That is in local plans, trade local plan within the settlement development limit, as I understand it. But authority refused that permission. I understand that from what I read that permission quality was not, that's application quality was not brilliant. But it appears that the planning office has worked with the applicants for today's to improve the quality of the plan, but that doesn't look to have happened for the 22 houses on the other application. So it does make it look a little bit like this whole process is very subjective. I'm hoping it's not, but it does make it look like that. So that's the third point. The fourth minor point is the public comments. That there's a lot of public comments that have gone in. They're listed in the case officer's report, but there's no conclusions, no recommendations, no consequence of any of those comments, which I find a little bit disappointing. That's me.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And then speaking for the application, we have Ashley Grant. Again, you'll have 4 minutes. I'll have to cut you off if you go over. Okay, thanks.
Good evening, members. My name is Ashley Grant, and I'm here today as an employee of Cotswold Homes, a privately run family business building in the region of 100 high-quality homes a year across the southwest, employing many local trades. The proposals before you are a result of extensive discussions and collaboration with statutory consultees and officers at the council. So back in 2016, a planning application for 44 homes and a nursery on the site was refused by the council and subsequently dismissed at appeal. While the council could demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply at that time, the planning inspector dismissed on the grounds that it would cause harm to the character and appearance of the surrounding area, and there were not sufficient benefits to outweigh that harm. Our application has paid careful attention to this, and we've worked hard to address these concerns. Specifically, our scheme has reduced the number of homes from 44 to 34 dwellings, and the development footprint has been notably reduced as well, so that it's further set back from boundaries with existing properties, and so that it does not extend as far into the field from Bath Road. Your officer's conclusion is that the application site is located within an accessible and sustainable location. The layout and design of the scheme is acceptable and complies with relevant policies of the development plan. The proposed development would also deliver a number of benefits. So based on the latest information from the council, there are 246 households on the council's housing register waiting list that have expressly specified a preference for an affordable home in Leonard Stanley. The proposal includes 12 affordable homes, which equates to 35% affordable housing, exceeding the council's planning policy requirement of 30%. The scheme will create new public open space, and including a community orchard for use by new occupiers of the development and existing members of the community. The development will deliver significant gains in biodiversity, including a 78% net gain for habitats and 87% net gain for hedgerows on site. And as a full planning application, this scheme can be delivered swiftly and will contribute early to the council's housing land supply. I would also highlight that the development will take a highly proactive approach to sustainability. So we will promote sustainable transport by providing our homeowners with a travel information pack with details on walking and cycling routes and public transport provision. And in addition, we've committed to providing each home with an electric bicycle voucher of £1,000, incentivising people to buy an electric bike, which they will hopefully use for local travel journeys. Hot water and heating for each dwelling will be supplied by air source heat pumps, and each home will have photovoltaic panels fitted and an electric vehicle charging point. Our energy assessment submitted with the application calculates that the development will deliver a 68% saving on residual carbon emissions compared to building regulations requirements. And the development will have a comprehensive drainage strategy that utilises sustainable drainage measures such as bioretention verges and attenuation basins to store and slow down stormwater and then release at a restricted rate. We consider that these measures and the overall benefits of the scheme, sustainable development, that accords with the overarching objectives of the National Planning Policy Framework. As a local house builder with a focus on high quality design and employing local trades, I hope that you're able to support us by agreeing with your officer's recommendation to approve the application. This will be a highly regarded development for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Questions? Anybody? Yes, Kath.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the officers why they had, recommended that we grant permission for this in the light of the comments by Leonard Stanley Parish Council. Did you think that their objections weren't material to the development, or what?
I think all objections are material, and we tend to address them as far as practically possible in our reports. But we also have to be guided our own and the national planning policy. So it always is a bit of a difficult one to do the right way, and ultimately sometimes we do have to disregard some comments from parish council, but it doesn't mean that they ignore it in any sense, shape, or all concerns tend to be addressed where they're relevant. Did that answer your question?
I think I'm not sure really. Did you think their objections were material?
I think lots of them are material, but
not all of them.
Not all of them. So when we receive objections about certain aspects of people's view from their properties and so on, they are not a material planning consideration. They are not always material planning considerations, so we do have to disregard them in our assessment.
If I may, Chair, I think what we're really looking at here is an issue of weight. So it's the weight that an officer will apply to the policies and material considerations that are raised in consultation responses compared to the parish. And there are very different roles there. The parish is clearly representing their community, and it's rightful that they do that. And the officer is looking to deliver sustainable growth that benefits the public, and the public in that being the district. So we don't disregard anything, but the weight that we apply to things will be different. I think that's where Eleanor's answer is heading, but hopefully that makes it slightly clearer. Thank you, Chair.
And also sometimes matters are raised which aren't actual planning, like the right to a view isn't a material planning consideration. They don't have a right to a view, unfortunately. Dave, do I have you next?
Thank you. Just a few very minor questions, really. Do we know what the EPC rating is intended to be for the dwellings? Have we had that? I couldn't see it in the report. The energy performance rating.
Yeah, I do know what APC is, yes. I've recently had to have one done on my house, so yeah, I do. I also understand where they're quite deficient. They are very old mechanism for measuring efficiency. So in their own nature at the moment, they are looking at updating that system. We cannot know what the EPC rating will be for two reasons. The regime is likely to change and start looking at different elements in a different light. And also, that regime only applies to buildings which are actually complete. So until the building's complete, we don't really know.
Thank you. I'm encouraged about the quite extensive SUDS action that's going on. It's impressive. But I wondered about rainwater harvesting at the properties themselves. Is there any intention to fit either large-scale rainwater harvesting or even more rainwater butts on those properties? Do we know?
I can't comment on that because it wasn't part of the determination, and it is not required by policy.
Thank you. And then the e-bike parking. So e-bike vouchers, again, all very positive and lovely for the potential residents. But is there, in the parking, is e-bike charging specified?
Again, I can't comment on that. E-bikes are not required. It is an additional extra or at the applicant's expense. It's not required by us. You will note that some units have garages, so I would assume that the EV charging points for bikes may be located in those.
Got it. And then finally, I quite like the planting plan, particularly the community orchard. That's good. But I have some very specific detailed feedback on it if I can send that through to you on a separate note.
I think you may, but those details are also to be determined at the discharge of condition.
Any more questions? If not, would somebody like to propose officer advice, which is to permit with some delegated authorities as set out in the report? If nobody's leaping to that, I can propose it from the chair for the interest of getting debate started. So I'll do that. Anybody prepared to second? Helen seconding. Helen, do you want to kick off on debate? Sorry, was that a no? Okay. Anybody else want to debate on this? Dave?
Thanks, Chair. I'm a bit torn on this one, really. I love the greenness of the properties that are proposed. It is a very low, bang on about density again, but it's very low density housing, and I'm sure it'll be a lovely environment for people to live in. And I think that the sensitive design layout, I like the fact that the properties have been kind of put up nearer the other housing, leaving a large area of green space and quite a wide riparian margin. But I'm also very moved by the representations from ward councillors, and it does seem a bit of a waste of a nice field just to put a relatively small number of properties in there. I think, there's a part of me that thinks, well, if you're going to desecrate a green field that local communities really enjoy, surely you should put some more housing on it so that at least you're getting full value for money from the green loss that's and the community loss that's going on. So I'm a bit torn. I hear officer recommendation and all the planning considerations, and I know that we should be voting for this. But if I do vote for it, and I haven't decided yet, but if I do vote for it, it will be with a bit of a kind of mixed feelings, heavy heart. Don't really want to do this. Yeah.
Anybody else for debate? Martin and then John and Terry. Yeah, I think you caught my eye first. Okay, John, then Martin, then Terry.
Thank you very much, Martin. My question is really a need to understand this business of weightings. You'll excuse me that I'm new to this committee, so I'm hearing really for the first time quite a lot of new words. At the site's panel meeting, John Chaplin explained that my enthusiasm, just as the same for Dave over there, for the green aspects of the development of the plan, I'm encouraged. I like to see that. I really am encouraged. But I wonder if somebody could explain, either John or Alina, how is this weighting work? Is there a definitive list that councillors are, that officers are applying? I mean, how does it actually work?
Thank you, Caroline. As we've covered when we do our member, training, we have our material planning considerations, which are well established as to the elements of a scheme which we can give weight to. But we give positive and negative weight. So we can have weight against something if it's harmful, and we can have positive weight if it's got a good, if there is a good influence. But our weighting is always on what's established in our planning policy. So if we're linking this, and I realise we're in debate, we're going sort of backwards a step into questions again. But Councillor Matthews was talking about the green credentials of the site, and implying that he wanted to give that a positive weight. That was a sign of good design. Our policies require the provision of public open space on effectively a formula, the amount of space required in certain category types by population growth. So as long as you achieve that policy, you're policy compliant, and that's all that you're required to do in planning policy. So it's very difficult for me to say we apply weight in one way or another. This is where you evolve in your roles as members of this committee in thinking, right, I'm going to take a material planning consideration and I'm going to apply my planning judgment, and this is the position that I get to. It's a real skill.
Oh, yeah. Apologies, very quickly through the chair. I was just going to say that for a starting point, if you are struggling as to the weight, officers will give you a guide as to what their thoughts are on it in the report, and they will, on each of the specific material elements of the scheme, they will sum up what they consider the weight to be, and then the members of the committee here will be able to take that into account and balance that in reaching your decision.
Thank you very much for that information, but I have read the report and I've made my own decision already, but I'm interested to hear what everybody else to say, including the officers. Thank you.
Martin, and then, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain, you were asking how we actually do it. So you will see in my report that is a rule of thumb. We can say it that way. Where the scheme is compliant with the policy, the compliance, in my professional opinion, carries neutral weight. It's something you have to do in order to get planning permission. It's something you do. So in this case, in particular, the affordable housing provision is a good example of how the weight works. The 30% provision would be required by our policy, and that would be given a neutral weight. But in this case, a further 5% provision is provided, and it is that over provision which is given a significant weight in the decision making in that particular topic, if that makes sense. So I do try to cover it in my report. I understand it's not an easy read, but it is all there. And yes, opinions may differ.
Right, I've got Martin and Terry. Helen, did you have your hand up? And then Helen and Millie. Okay, so Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to think of it from a tilted balance perspective. And if I go through the report, most of the areas seem to give neutral weights. So in my mind, that means essentially I discount those because it's a zero effect. If I go through the ones that are given weights, material or significant weights, then I can see we've got CP 15, which is outside the development area. So that weighs against the decision. Then I can see CP 8, which gives significant weight, so that down even further against the decision. In favour of the decision, we have improvements to the right of way, although I think that the footpath seems pretty good as it is already. I can see that there's significant impact to the affordable housing because they provide over and above the affordable housing. And then there is also the fact that on the negative side again, to weighing it further down, is consideration of the previous appeal, which gives moderate weight to that. So in my simplistic accounting mind, I can look at all these and say, well, actually, if I do the maths, I've got more on the negative than I have on the positive. So therefore, that forms my opinion. Now, I know somebody said each of those sections probably don't carry the same weight, and it's for me to make that judgment. But just thinking from an accountant's perspective and looking through the report, that's what I'm picking.
Yeah, I was just seeing whether legal or planning officers wanted to weigh in on that. Yeah, the tilt. Yes, I think Griff does want to jump in.
I wasn't going to because we are in debate, but what I would say to that is in principle, that is a very good approach to it. But don't forget that the provision of housing in itself is afforded weight, and under the tilted balance, that's given very significant weight. So I don't disagree that in reaching a balance, you will balance off your negatives. I don't want to get involved in debate. I think the bit that's missing from your comment is the significant weight to housing delivery, particularly under the tilted balance.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was going to say, that housing provision is, as central government have made very clear, a major benefit which they want to see, and which we want to see, want houses for people to live in the right place. And also the tilted balance pretty much negates the CP15, because we can't rely on being outside of settlement boundaries, either in the existing plan or the draft plan, as a refusal reason anymore. One of the very few reasons we can still refuse is if the impact on the national landscape. So it's the tilted balance really does, it puts the thumb down pretty hard on the negatives. Sorry, the positives of the housing provision, and everything else then carries much less weight. So I'm probably getting ahead of myself because I should be summing up, but the tilted balance really does change everything. It changes the balance. But I've got other people who want to jump in. Unless Martin, were you okay with that for now, or did you want to say something more?
Yes, I think I understand that, there is a substantial one to the positive, but it's still supposed to be a tilted balance. It's just the way you're thinking. So again, I think it's still up to each and obviously the members. Think, well, what balance do we do? Because that's what we're here to do, isn't it? And it is on those significant weights rather than neutral weights that we need to be focusing on, I would suggest.
Yeah, and I think the counter argument I was trying to put, not my argument, but the central government's argument, is housing provision carries a lot more weight than pretty much anything else. I'm thinking about ecology, nature recovery, but there we are. Right, I've got Terry, then Helen and Millie.
Thank you for all that helpful balancing. Gosh, I think we're all torn on this one. I believe the biodiversity net gain is quite significant on this, so I don't think, I think that's a relevant factor as well. So it's not like everything is lost because you've lost a field, you may gain elsewhere. That's the whole principle of BNG, isn't it? I'm feeling quite emotional about this. If only we had a development like this in Canada, I would love my constituents to have the opportunity to live somewhere like this. And I would like people who need social housing to have the opportunity to live in somewhere like this. And that to me, so I guess I would like to commend Elaine on her report, which I think she's got the balance right. And I agree with the balance as presented in the report, in fact. Mainly from my point of view, from the housing, I think is a very weighty and extremely material consideration. Thank you.
Right, Helen and then Millie.
Yeah, I'm also finding this decision very difficult, because I feel that the fact that the fact that this field is outside the settlement boundary, it's outside the local plans that the community have been consulted on, they have input into. We've drawn up, we've had these long processes of consultation to construct local plans. And I think, the point is that if we start allowing this feels like a bit of a precedent to me, because I feel like this is perhaps one of the first cases where the tilted balance has been at the forefront of our minds, and we're seeing how much impact that has. Because before the tilted balance rules came in or were relevant, if we were looking at an application outside a settlement boundary that wasn't in a local plan, I don't think we would be even calling it into committee to discuss. It just wouldn't be on the radar. So this feels like a bit of a case of, do we stand up for what our local communities want, or do we cower under the weight of the new government regulations that have been imposed on us? So I feel this is quite a significant moment, actually. It's a shame it's happening at 10 to 10 at night, because it's important. And earlier in the meeting, I was wondering if this is a case where we should say, actually, in Stroud, we don't want that. We don't want to be told that we have to build, because houses are needed, that we have to build them where communities don't want them. Maybe we should be standing up for our communities on this occasion. So and I'm mindful as well of everything that's previously been said about the planning balance, how that's weighed up. So this is very hard. This is a difficult decision to make. Thank you.
Millie and then Kath.
Yeah, I agree with everything my councillor colleagues have said, really. It's a tricky decision. But people need homes. They can't all be built in Cam. And this field, I was interested to note, has been under attack by planning before for a significantly larger development with a nursery. It looks like a field that is not ever going to see a peaceful resolution for itself. And when we saw it, it was monoculture, was hot and dry, but, the housing is arranged in such a way that a significant proportion of the field remains and is added to with the community orchard. And I think, not wishing to be too partisan about, this place or that place, if every village is offered an opportunity to have quite sensitively built housing with a very green tilt to its build, I just, these are going to be family homes. The majority of them are 4 bedrooms. They'll bring life and children into the village. And, it's not huge blocks of flats. I think, a little bit like Councillor Kinnison said, it looks, if you're going to have a development, this looks like a nice development. And the photographs that Alana put up show hedgerows and trees and just a few rooftops. And I hear what Councillor Fenton has said. I do understand that. But, our politics is moved by people not feeling they can afford homes. And I think, it's right that we look at building sensitively where we can. I'm sad for the field, but it does feel to me as if it slightly fits the village to put these houses there. So take everything that everybody said into account. But I think the officer's advice is probably right. And I'm pleased to see the beautiful trees preserved, the fact that the footpath can still be accessed and you'll be out into the countryside quite quickly and past those houses. So I think on balance, I'm inclined to support officers' advice.
Yes, Kath.
Yeah, I was just going to raise a point. On page 89 of the papers that we've got, and it's relating to what people have been talking about, the need for housing. It reports that the greatest need is for 3-bedroom homes, and 83% 83% of the houses on this development are going to be 4-bedroom homes. So I'm not sure that this development is being built because of housing need alone. And I think that's a bit of a shame, because a lot of these houses are going to be out of the reach of most local people. Yeah, great that there is some affordable, though there's a debate about how many people could afford affordable homes. And I think there's some social rents that aren't there in there. Yeah, which is brilliant. But this is not a development based on housing need, I would say.
Okay, to Melza, and then probably we should be looking at winding up debate. I think back to you. Go on.
I keep it short. I have to say, taking on board everything everyone said and listening to my ward councillors, listening to the parish clerk, I absolutely understand what these residents are saying. I've got a lot of experience with new builds, and I know how invasive it can be to areas. I take on board the history as well. But if somebody had offered this development to me, I would jump at the chance. I absolutely take on board what Millie said. It's a lovely layout. I think the developer's taken on board a lot of the comments that have come as a result of a lost appeal. And quite frankly, I'm inclined to go with officer's recommendation, because I think it's a really well written report by our officer, so I'm inclined to go for it.
Anybody else? If not, since I technically proposed it, I guess I get to say the last word. And I think my last word would be, as I said before and we'd be saying again, we're between a rock and a hard place. We're stuck. It's very similar to the one in Coley that we had to permit, because quite simply, if we refuse on CP15 outside settlement limits and out in open countryside, we'll lose it. And quite possibly, given the planning policy, could even be seen as being unreasonable in refusing on the ground. Although we don't really have any choice, but this won't be the last situation, and pretty much the only defence we've got now is landscape issues in the national landscape. Otherwise, we are where we are. So I'll be voting for officer advice. Right, are we still doing hands up? Yeah, okay. So just to be clear, it's officer advice to permit with delegated authority to... Do you want to summarise what the delegated authority is that we're agreeing?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So it is set out in the papers for you. The scheme of delegation gives us power to do... gives us the authority to do Section 106s, but because the Section 106 is linked to BNG, and the BNG might be done partly by condition, we are seeking a resolution to grant subject to the satisfactory resolution of BNG, and therefore the legal agreement securing the heads of terms, and it is as set out. It is as set out in the recommendation for you, which is on page 135 of your papers, and hopefully that's the last time I have to use this microphone.
Commend everybody for not giving in to the urge to destroy council property tonight. Right, okay, so is everybody clear on what we're voting for, which is basically officer advice to permit with the delegated authority as set out? Okay, so all those in favour, hands up. And those against? And no abstentions, because that's all of us. So that is carried. And as I say, well done on resisting the urge to get back at the bloody technology. And thanks everybody for coming and safe